tell you something, brother. This might be the best OG Kush I've ever had. Ooh. Ooh, yeah. You just said a mouthful, brother. I'm higher than helicopter butt. Listen, though, Hulkster. Younglurch has been running his mouth on that podcast. Blaze the Bingohall podcast needs to show some respect to the veterans, brother. I say we run in there and show Younglurch and his guest just exactly who the OGs of this game are, What you gonna do, Blaze the Bingohall podcast, when the Macho Man and the Hulkster run wild on you? Ooh, yeah. Give me like 10 minutes, though, because I'm really, really stoned. Oh, yeah.
Welcome into the Bingohall. Welcome back to the Bingohall, in case you are a return viewer. But if you haven't already, like I always say, like and subscribe right now. Today, we are joined by second-generation sensation, Brian Hardy. Brian, welcome into the Bingohall, my friend.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. And wow, what an intro. That Hogan and Savage rocking your intro in the beginning.
Yes, awesome. Man. Hogan getting down with the hashish, you know what I mean? Macho Man, trying to hit the run in on us. Yeah, I honestly thought about changing it, but then Hogan passed, and I was like, well, I can't change it now. I gotta kind of let it go. Yeah, so it's like I'm gonna let it ride out for a little while, and then maybe get a different sort of intro going, but who knows? We'll see how it goes. But yeah, everybody seems to love it. So that's why I'm like, I gotta kind of keep it, So, but yeah, man, I appreciate you for stopping by and blazing it with your boy Younglurch. But yeah, we'll get right into it. So we're gonna have some questions for you today, Brian. The first one I want to start off with is, like I said, you're second generation. Growing up as a second generation wrestler, what's the earliest memory of the business for you?
Man. Well, it's kind of crazy. So I tell people all the time I was like 2 years old. That's like my earliest memory of remembering pro wrestling. Like people say, like, how long have you been a wrestling fan? My whole life. Like, I don't remember. I'm sure I was younger than that, but the first one that comes to mind was sitting on my great grandfather's lap in the living room, WWF Superstars on, Ultimate Warrior running down the aisle. I don't even know who he was wrestling at the time, but I was just hooked. The pageantry, Hogan, Flair, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man, all that kind of stuff, like just their outfits, and everything that was happening in pro wrestling at the time seemed great, to a tiny little kid. So I'm like, dude, this is amazing. Most kids grew up, with a bottle or a pacifier. I grew up chewing on Hulk Hogan action figures. So yeah. I tell people, I'm like, that's my earliest memory. My second earliest memory as a kid is definitely I'd say 1993, sitting on my mom's bed, water bed at the time, and her saying, "You ready to watch your dad tonight?" And, my dad and Dwayne Gilbert coming on the screen, wrestling the Steiner brothers at the Manhattan Center, and I'm like, holy crap. And there's certain, memories, like I can remember eating breadsticks with my grandmother, and she would watch Murder, She Wrote, and Monday Night Raw would come on right after that. Yeah. So just tiny little things like that make me think, oh, but it's weird because people always ask oh, since you were a second generation wrestler, you and your dad and this and that and whatever. And it's like, I didn't have the greatest relationship with my dad as a kid, because my mom and my dad got divorced at when I was very young. So he was always on the road with WWF, WCW, and then ECW towards the end. And I was constantly being raised by my grandparents. So my mom and my dad weren't heavily in the picture in my younger, childhood. But as I grew up, I started to have a pretty decent relationship with my dad.
Grandma played a big role in your early life, right?
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. So raised by both my grandparents, got both my grandparents tattooed on my arm right there.
Okay.
So my grandmother and
nice.
My grandfather. And absolutely amazing people. They were my mom's parents, but they were just absolutely great folks and literally made sure that I had everything I needed as a child.
So, like you said, Dad wasn't really around that much when you were younger or when you were breaking into the business. But do you think that made it easier to break in or harder to break in because maybe there was extra expectations because people would, find out that you were second generation, so maybe they expected more from you or a certain something from you?
It was a really bad stigma at times. At other times, it could be helpful. And I've experienced both realms of it. One side of things were, there was days where people would say, oh, the only reason that he ever got here or there was because of his dad, because of who his dad. And then there's other people that would be like, man, like he worked himself, you know, from the ground up. Like he didn't take any shortcuts and this and that and whatever. And like, I think there's truth to both of those at times. And that's crazy because I think you're the only person I've ever been interviewed by that's ever asked this.
Really?
So I think that there's truths to both at different times. I feel like I really did, you know, bust my butt to get to where I need to be myself. But at the same time, there were times where, you know, like I would go to do something and right away someone would drop my dad's name. And as soon as they dropped my dad's name, instantly everybody's demeanor towards me changed. And like even in WWE, for example, there were some people, you know, and it's just, there's certain people in the business that are completely uneducated and they could care less. Like, I don't know who your dad is. I don't care, you know, this and that and whatever. And then there's other people like Abyss was one of my agents for a match one time. And when he found out, like, you're Barry Hardy's son, I was like, yeah, he went out of his way above and beyond to
take care of you
different than anybody else. Like at that point in time, I was like, dude, like Abyss is like the coolest guy in the world.
Yeah.
He found out I was Barry Hardy's son. It just turned into something completely different. Like where he was like, all right, kid, like you were already decent at working, but like now I'm definitely going to like make sure
look out for you.
Yeah. Like go to bat for you. And he did. And he really like, that night especially, I mean, we'll get into all that, but that night especially, like Vince McMahon was so happy, which in turn came back very good for him because he was producing the match. So I was like, awesome.
Yeah. What do you think your biggest influences were inside or outside of your family?
Ooh, inside, I mean, that's tough because there's a lot of you know, people always used to ask all the time, like, was your dad your hero? And like, yes, to an extent. Like as a child, like my dad wrestled every guy that I wanted to wrestle. My dad was wrestling Jake Roberts, Kerry Von Erich, all these different guys, like when I was a kid, and I was like, holy crap, like, you know, that's my dad, like awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, just as a, I guess, a wrestling fan, like I said, for the sake of pageantry as a kid, I was always a Hulkamaniac. I would 110% credit. I've always done it in interviews. This isn't just because he recently passed away or anything like that or whatever. Like I was a diehard Hulkamaniac since the time I was born. I had every merchandise thing known to man, from clocks to trash can, a little tiny trash can in my bathroom,
a workout set.
Yeah, like everything. I mean, all of my photographs as a kid, I'm wearing a Hulk Hogan hat, and like all of my photos when I went to prom, you know, at Ravens Stadium when I was 17, I had Hulk Hogan airbrushed on the back of my prom vest.
Nice
stuff. Like he was just always a major part of everything. But I mean, that was the pageantry side of things. And I never say, you know, you always hear the stigma of everybody saying like, oh, Hogan sucked at wrestling. Hogan did not suck at wrestling. Like anybody that can go out and wrestle that many hundreds of days in a year, and less is more in this business. And the more you're able to just get yourself over and not have to work as hard in that aspect in the ring is fantastic. You know, the less you do, you're preserving your body even more. Yep. Hogan could go out every single night and do that. And that was fantastic. And I find myself later on in my career working that same exact way, where maybe when I was younger, I was obsessed with the Dynamite Kid, and I was obsessed with Chris Benoit, and I was obsessed with Eddie Guerrero and this and that. And I mean, I was just going pound for pound in my younger years in my matches. And I realized, well, maybe it's not so smart anymore to dive out into the third row of the audience and crash through a bunch of chairs and stuff like that and everything. And I was like, I can't do that anymore. Like I love technical wrestling. I love guys like Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards and stuff like that. I patterned myself after a lot of those guys early on in my career, but I can't work like that anymore in comparison to now almost reaching, you know, this will be my 18th year in professional wrestling. And I'm like, some days I feel like I'm 90 years old, and some days I feel like I gotta rub the knees out.
What does 18 equate to in actual wrestling years? That's got to be like times 7 or something like dog years. You know?
Yeah, it's some days I'm like, man, I got the Terry Funk going on now, where I'm literally like sitting on the edge of my bed, like the Beyond the Mat video, like rubbing my knees out and washing my face in the mirror and just praying to God, you know, that I can get up and function like a normal human being for a little bit. So
that's funny you say that about Hogan, though, because I argue with people about that all the time. When people say Hogan can't work, Hogan has the same couple moves or whatever, it's like, go look at his shit in Japan. Yeah. That shit will blow your mind to see some of the stuff that he would do, and the way that he would work technically over there with those guys and work strong with those guys. And you're like, oh, he only did the same things. No, he had to work over there. He had to earn it over there. You know what I mean? Like,
It's like Cena, you know, like Cena's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and whether people want to admit it or not, like I was a Cena fan like in like 03, 04, that kind of stuff and whatever. But like you can't discredit what he's done in the business because he's worked his ass off to the point. Am I allowed to say ass?
Oh, you can say whatever you want. Say whatever you want.
Awesome. He's worked his ass off to the point where like it's just one of those scenarios where it's like he could go pound for pound and do whatever and hang with the best of them, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't need to. Yeah. So it's like
that's what some people don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying, like I said, to phone it in every day, but I'm also saying like you don't got to go out and kill yourself to the point beyond repair where it's like, how are you going to walk, you know, the next day? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? So yeah, stick to your 5 basic moves, stick to your this and your that and whatever. Like I laugh because like nowadays I don't even call matches with people anymore. Like I go to the ring, they look like they're about to like piss their pants. And like, I just literally go to the ring, we get in the ring and we work. And my thing is I always tell everybody, I'm like, look, nothing that we do matters at all when we get in there. The only thing you need to know is when it's time for me to come back as a babyface, I'm going to hit you with a clothesline. I'm going to hit you with a back elbow. You're going to go to throw the line, and I'm going to hit you with a neck breaker. And that is it. Like, besides that, everything else, bro, doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. You can kick my ass the entire match. You can beat me around. You can this and that. But when I get ready to come back, bro, I'm coming back, and that's how I'm doing it. And it's so simplistic and so easy. It's like clockwork. It's just, you know, over and over, repetition. And it's like people might say, oh, shit, here comes the Brian Hardy comeback. We know it's the clothesline, the back elbow, the this, the that. It's like, if it works, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Don't fix it, yeah. It's funny how, like, I feel like a lot of people, the training has changed to where, like, the way that they want to put together matches, like you said, is completely different than that. It's I want to plan every single little thing. And the thing is if you go along with that and the crowd's not biting off of it, then it's just dead. And the crowd is just dead with you. And it's like, they're sitting there like, oh, well, how come they didn't react? Well, because they weren't into it. You know what I mean? You thought that they were going to be into it, but if they don't bite, then you're just, you know what I mean? You're just out there doing a pre-rehearsed, like choreographed weird thing. And it's just, sometimes you can tell when it's, like you said, I don't know if it's, I won't say phoning it in, but like, it's like like I said, pre-rehearsed. Like, I mean, it doesn't feel natural out there. You know what I mean? Not to say that there aren't spots. Obviously everybody calls spots, but like, I don't know. People don't know how to call it in the ring like that, I guess, anymore, or they're scared to. But it's also a good tool to have. You got to be able to do it all, I guess. You know,
and that's the thing. Like, I think it would be tougher for me, honestly, nowadays to remember spots in comparison to, like, you know, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, duck the line, duck to this, duck to that, blah, blah, blah. I love watching AEW. I love AEW. A lot of people crap on it and everything like that. I love AEW. Could I go and work that style? I mean, yeah, for $350,000 a year, I'm sure I probably could work that style.
Can learn real quick, right?
But at the same time, if I don't got to do it, I'm not gonna do it. And like, I'm in that situation where I look at things and I go, if you're zing, 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 zing the entire time, people have done lost interest. They're sitting there and they're like, shit, I'm gonna go get popcorn now, you know, and whatever else. And at that point in time, I'm like, I'd rather hit somebody one good time and just walk around the ring and then be like, oh shit, I registered what he just did, you know, like.
And like, I get AEW, like they're trying to be the best wrestling promotion, have the best wrestling matches, but I don't think that they put any thought into the way a card is built and the way that it should build throughout the night. Like, they just give you everything, car crash, and then it's like, oh, here's our main event. It's like, okay, well, here's 4 or 5 hours later, I'm like falling asleep because you done sucked all the energy out of me.
Yeah,
and that's the same way live too. Like, it feels the same way.
And that's not just AEW. That's WWE.
That style. That
I was gonna say that's indie wrestling as a whole nowadays. I literally tell people, I'm like, look, guys, like the opening match on the card should be no longer than 5 minutes. I'm like, with the babyface always up. I'm like, and the thing is I'm like, most people, you know, you got guys that are going on for 17 minutes on the opening match on the card. They're literally finishing the match with
doing everything under the sun.
Yeah, they've done killed, you know, you've done 10 flipping pile drivers and this and that and whatever. And I'm literally sitting there going, you didn't save anything for match 4 or match 5. So by the time we hit intermission, you know, the thing is too, I've been on cards where I'm like, if we're on match 4 or match 5 for intermission, then hopefully there's only like 2 matches afterwards. I've been on cards where there's 17 matches on one show, and I'm literally going, you've done lost people. Like if you're doing like a weekly taping or something, like we do USW Justice, we might do 4 matches an episode. So we might do 4, 8, 12, 16 matches. We might do 16 matches in one day, but we're going to allow people to take intermissions. We're going to allow people to take bathroom breaks, this and that, whatever. So that way they can at least get their concessions. They can get re-energized again and stuff like that. People cannot sit through that many matches, and especially lengthy matches. If we're doing Justice, most matches that I'm doing, unless they're main events, are like 4 to 5 minutes. And then you have like people in the wrestling business that are getting mad, like, oh, I literally drove this far, or I did this or that for a 5-minute match. And it's like, yeah, but you're doing like 3 5-minute matches in 3 different episodes, and you know, you're telling a decent story, hopefully, and getting your shit over, rather than like, I need 17 minutes to get something over. Well, then you don't know how to work at that point. Like if you're taking that long, like I get it if you're the main event. If you're the main event and it's, you know, TV time remaining and you're 17 minutes or 20 minutes, cool, fine, have your way. But at the same time, there's a lot about the business that I sit there and go, oh, yeah. And then it's so hard because there is like what I consider to be the new generation of wrestlers. Then there's my generation of wrestlers. And then there's like my dad's generation of wrestlers. And I feel right now like my dad's generation of wrestlers are all looking at my generation and kind of categorizing us with the new young guys. And I'm like, whoa, that's not fair. I'm like, because I've got like 18 years in right now. So I'm like, don't categorize me as the guy that's got 3 years in and is going out opening match and doing all that shit. I'm like, because that's not fair. I'm like, I know my spot on the card. I know what I need to do. And, you know, like there's guys, like I said, if I know I'm on before intermission, bro, like I'll send them, you know, happy. I'll give them a little bit here or there or whatever, but I know that there's still a show after that intermission. And so I don't want to take all the cake and eat it too.
Yeah,
you know?
Some people don't understand the flow of things, I guess. I want to ask you about the second generation thing, though. That's something that you only adopted like later on, right? That's not something that you tried to use early on because you tried to, I guess, differentiate yourself.
Yeah, it was never the vision that it gets misconstrued so much. The vision was never like, you know, and that's another thing too. You kind of flows with those and this and that and whatever else, and that was tough because my thing was I look at the second generation sensation thing now as a tribute to my dad, like where. Okay, so for example, I've not mentioned his name one time during this interview yet, but like, so now I'll say it. So back when I first broke into the business, I was just the sensation Brian Hardy. And then, you know, we got to talking, me and a couple buddies one day and yada, 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 this and that. And it was like somehow the second generation sensation thing popped up. And I was like, oh, that's, you know, that's catchy. That's cool. We'll go with that. And at the time, nobody else has ever referred to themselves as the second generation sensation on the independents or anything like that. So I was like, if they did, it'd be a huge cease and desist thing now. And, you know, we've got all the trademarks and legality stuff covered and everything like that. But I was like, if anybody else had referred to themselves as like, even on commentary, if someone said he's a second generation sensation or something like that, like I was like, no, that's going to be me. That's going to be something that everybody will always remember. So you hear people say second generation superstar, second generation wrestler, so I was like, cool. When they think of Brian Hardy, they'll think of second generation sensation. But the thing was, like I said, it was never like a let me ride off my father's coattails. It was if people see that name, second generation sensation, the first thing they're going to think is who the hell is his dad? And then at that point in time, now it is an educational professional wrestling lesson. So now you go on Google and you type in, who is Brian Hardy's dad? And then it pops up and, you know, Brian Hardy is the son of a former WWF, ECW wrestler, Bad Boy Barry Hardy, and yada, yada, yada. So now if you didn't know who my dad was, now you've taken the time to educate yourself, to go back in on the internet. You can type it in on Google, YouTube, whatever, this and that. And then now you can find Barry Hardy matches. So it was always a nod and a tip of the hat and a tribute. It was never like, I'm going to ride the, you know, success and the glory and the this and that. It was dumb. Like, I used to hear people say that all the time in the rumor mill, and I used to get so mad because I was like, no, if anything, like, it's me saying, like, thank you, Dad, for all of your contributions and your hard work to the wrestling business and, you know, and stuff.
A way for his stuff to live on, too, you know what I mean? And, for everything to come full circle for people to look up. Yeah, I totally get that. who do you remember? What do you remember most about training during your first, I guess, early career get into the business? And what were some of your first matches?
Ooh, okay. Yeah. So what I do remember is, so I wanted to be a pro wrestler so bad. The reason, and people always say like, oh, you were a musician, for many years. I still am. I've been a musician for 25 years. I've been a pro wrestler for 18 years. And I tell people that the only reason that I ever became a musician was because of the fact that I couldn't get a wrestling license in the state of Maryland until I turned 18. So I thought to myself, how do I get out in front of audiences? How do I get seen? How do I this and that? So I started playing music when I was 10. And the catchphrase that people use all the time is Brian Hardy was Justin Bieber before Justin Bieber existed. I used to play these humongous shows in front of all these large audiences and stuff as a kid. And I'm like, I wish now today, and I'm man enough to admit it, I wish today that I had the audiences as a musician. I would kill to have that type of audience that I used to perform.
Or to have like social media or something.
Yeah, as a tool, man, that would have, I would have, man. One of my kids is a musician. Alex is currently in Berkeley and has 350,000 followers on TikTok. And I literally went like YouTube viral a number of years ago and stuff, or TikTok viral a number of years ago and stuff. And I literally said, if I had at my feet what you have right now back when I was starting out in the music business, it would have been insane.
Yeah.
But, starting out in the wrestling business, I turned 18 years old. I was fresh, like 2 weeks out of high school. I went and signed up for a professional wrestling school in Dundalk or Essex, Maryland, one of the two. I won't say the name of the place because I don't even like to give it any energy or anything like that. But pretty much they took my money, and it was like, we'll do a payment plan, yada, 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 this and that. So they started to take my money. I was making my monthly payments and everything like that. And once again, the story that everything in the wrestling business is smoke and mirrors, telephone, telegram, telewrestler, and everything. There's always three sides to every story: their side, and the truth. And the truth is always a fine line somewhere there in the middle. So it's like much like any pro wrestling school. You sign up. You rather have the money to pay for it, or you don't have the money to pay for it. I would have had the money to pay for it regardless, because the thing was I was pretty much spoiled as a child, and I had a very, very, very hard young childhood life. And when I turned about 14 or 15, my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother just pretty much gave me whatever I wanted. Like, she made it to the point where she realized any way, shape, or form. So she was the one who really pushed me to the idea of going to that wrestling school. You want to talk about a rough beginning, hazing, and just constantly getting beat on and just pushed around. And once again, I believe in paying dues, but there's a huge difference between paying dues and just getting your ass kicked all the time for no reason, not learning anything. I think that's one thing I tell all my students today at the USW Academy is do not ever give your body to somebody and allow them to just beat the living shit out of you and, treat you like, hell. I believe in certain lessons, and I tell, my students certain very beneficial information that they go, oh, light bulb, it goes off and things are cool. But yeah, I was in that realm of, we're just going to kick this guy's ass.
You come back or just to see if you'll even, whatever, just to take your money.
Yeah, and it was cool, and I would take the ass kickings, and I remember there's funny stories that we talk about where in the same class that I trained in, there was guys like Drolix and Kindred and all these different guys back in that time frame. And so I'm sure they have their own little funny stories, too. I'm not saying that they've ever said anything, because they haven't. I'm just simply saying they probably have their funny stories, too, of the first day of wrestling school, Brian Hardy passed out after running, 2 miles or 3 miles or this or whatever. And a nurse had to stick an ice pack down his, crotch area, this and that. It was real stuff, and it's people don't realize how hard it is to get into pro wrestling. You wrestle on the trampoline a couple times and you think you know it all and this and that and whatever. And I thought, because I had an insider's way to the business, my cousin is Chad Austin, who used to be in ECW. Some people knew him from the Smoky Mountain days and stuff like that. And I thought as a kid, because I had full-blown access to a lot of stuff with Chad, I had access to, VHS tapes, Command, or anything like that. I mean, everything I ever wanted was at my beck and call with Chad. Chad would to say, come here, kid, lock up with me. And I mean, he was teaching me stuff without physically taking me to any wrestling schools and stuff like that. So as a kid, I had all this insider knowledge. I was thinking, man, I'm going to just go into wrestling school and rule it. Well, I did. I had a very faster speed education to a lot of that because of that. And they were just trying to see, will this guy come back? And when I kept coming back and kept coming back, they were like, oh, fuck, like, we're not going to break him. We don't know what we're going to be able to do now. But it got to the point then where I was just constantly a tackling dummy for people and just getting beat up all the time. And I was like, when am I going to fucking learn something? Like, when am I going to learn a wrist lock? When am I going to learn how to this and that? And at that point in time, I was like, fuck this. This business isn't for me. I'm going to quit. You know, you hear Ric Flair say he quit the wrestling business like 10 times before he really, you know, got into it. I said, fuck it. I'm going to quit. And I went home and I pretty much told my grandmother, like, I can't make it in pro wrestling. Like, I'm just getting my ass kicked all the time, and they're not even like really trying to like teach me anything and stuff. She said, well, why don't you call your father on the phone and see if he'll drive down from Florida, and I'll buy you a wrestling ring to stick here in the yard if your father, you know, I wasn't going to put that all on my grandmother at the time. I just started a new job. So her and I went in together, and like she paid for half the ring and I paid for half the ring and stuff like that. But she was super awesome and just very, very, very supportive. My dad did come down and ended up training me. But at the same time that my dad is training me, I've also got Axel Rotten constantly coming over to my grandmother's house and working out with me in the ring like weekly. I've got Pat Brink, who was recently at that time just let go from FCW.
Oh, wow.
So like he had just come back to the Maryland area, had all of WWE's knowledge and secrets and this and that, and whatever, and he's just passing that along to me as well. So I'm like, it was so awesome. And then before you knew it, it was like other people were stopping by at the time throughout, you know, the years. So it was like, I didn't just get, I tell everybody, like, wrestling is ice cream. You know, Axel, I wasn't just getting Pat Brink. You know, Gilbert would come over, my dad, this, that, blah, 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 blah. And I just had like a litany of people that I could choose from just to pick their brains. And I took what I liked from this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy and put it all together to create who I am today. But I mean, I never missed an opportunity to spend money, especially at an early age, on seminars. I mean, I'd go to freaking, you know, Carlito and Val Venus and this person. Every time a seminar would come to town, I would just sign up for the seminar. Hey, it's 40 or 50 bucks. While the rest of the world was like, dude, I'd rather spend that 40 or 50 bucks at Taco Bell and McDonald's. I was like, I will starve. Like, I will literally eat ramen noodles if I have to make sure that I am the most educated motherfucker in this business when it comes to knowing what I need to know to get somewhere. Yeah. And 4 years worth of eating shit, as I like to say, copious amounts, and having to like the way it tasted before I finally got a call from WWE for the first time. And still till this day, I tell people all the time that the very first time that I ever got called by WWE, it wasn't because of my dad, it wasn't because of this or that or whatever, it was because I had a match with Jerry the King Lawler, and WWE saw it and they liked it, and less than 6 months later, I was getting the call for the first time.
Nice. Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that for sure. What would you describe your style compared to your father's style? Is it a lot different? Because I know you say you took from a lot of different people. Do you see any similarities in what he has and what you do? Or are you just are completely different than what?
I think we're different in a sense of wrestling styles. I think we're a lot different in that. I think as far as fits and the glitz and the glam and all that kind of stuff, we're sort of on the same page with that. The bleach blonde hair and the this and the that and the whatever. We're kind of in the same realm on that. But when it comes to like in-ring move sets and stuff, we're a little different. Like I said, I hear a lot of the guys from my dad's generation say like, you know, kid, you're this or you're that or whatever. And it's sort of confusing sometimes, you know, because they'll say, even, you know, today I hear certain people say, you know, your dad loves you so much. It's just you and him when it comes to pro wrestling. Like, you guys are night and day because you're this way and he's that way. Like, that is too far off. I think we're actually on the cusp of like almost being somewhat alike. But I think, like I said, they all categorize me as like that younger, like second, third year generation guys. And I think they think that I'm still hitting the ropes and duck the line and duck to this and duck to that and do this and 10 fucking Canadian destroyers and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, it's the furthest thing from the truth.
It's funny. Like, it's funny, like when generations think that the next generation is the worst thing coming, and then so on and so on. And it's like you look back in the day, it's like Luthez and all these old guys thought that, like, you know, guys after them were the shits, and they're like the guys that we're now praising, like, oh, that's how the business should be.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny how it's always like that. It constantly continues.
Yes, and it's
always the next generation. They're the problem. They're the problem.
It's hit or miss because, like I said, it's funny because a lot of the guys that I'll wrestle, they will literally just say that I'm one way until they wrestle me. And then when they wrestle me, they go, oh my God, Brian Hardy is like one of the best people that we've ever been in the ring with. And it's like, yeah, but it took you getting in the ring with me to realize that I'm not like them, you know? It's tough. So I actually just had that happen not too long ago. I can't remember. Somebody was in the ring with me and Bob Starr, and like they had said the same thing. They were like, I like can't believe like I got in the ring, like Brian Hardy was like the safest guy and this and that, and like for years I'd heard that he was this way or that way or whatever, and they were like, I felt like I was wrestling like a guy my age, and Brian is half that guy's age, and I'm like, yeah, dude, like I was like, I can't stand the telephone, telegram, tele-wrestler shit because I'm like, some people's stories and I've got to be this and that and whatever. But I'm like, I'm probably one of the realest, most down-to-earth people that anyone will ever meet. But
that's the problem. That's the problem a lot of times. People can't take real and they can't take honesty. So when someone is real and they're, you know, they tell it how it is or what have you, it's like they either, you know, cower away from it or they go and they to somebody else because they can't handle that situation.
Someone said the other night at the wrestling school, at my wrestling school, like we're getting everything set up for a re-grand opening because we moved everything from Maryland to Delaware, and someone said Brian Hardy is the realest guy. Like, you may not like him, he may be cut from a different cloth than you, but one thing he'll never do is he'll never lie to you. Like, he will give you the straight truth, and he's rather gonna look at you and go, wow, man, that was the shit, or he's going to look at you and go, wow, man, that was the drizzling shit. And they're like, you've got to know the difference between the two, because he's rather putting you over huge and telling you, like, dude, that's amazing, or he's looking at you going, that's the drizzling shit. So I'll never do that.
Yeah, that's again. The thing. I'm the same way, like, with people. Like, I keep things 100, and some people just can't take it, you know. But hey, it is what it is. Who's one of your toughest opponents in the ring that you've had?
Gosh. It sucks because, like, I don't want to put him, throw him under the bus, like, in a sense of that. I won't go into like crazy. A tough opponent was probably the Tokyo Monster. I wrestled him in 2016 for the USW heavyweight title, close to Philadelphia, and I love the match, like watching the match back and stuff like that. Like, there are certain, you know, things that happen in the match that I just am like, wow, that looks crisp, or this looks good, or whatever. And once again, a guy that didn't know me from Adam, so he probably thought, like, you know, I'm wrestling this kid. What the hell does he know? And yada, yada, yada. He might not. I don't know. But I'm like, that was the vibe I was getting from the match. And I always said, like, it sucked because at the time, like, he had been like NWA World Heavyweight Champion, like, prior to that. Really? I don't know if it was like a year or two, whatever, but I followed his stuff. I think I don't remember if he lost the title to Rob Conway or somebody else, but it was like right around that time frame. He was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and years later now, it sucks because I used to be so like on my money about my artifacts and stuff, and now Concussion Lane has taken over the years that I don't remember certain things. But it sucks because he was like super talented, and it sucks because there's certain things in that I think about, and I'm like, did I do something wrong? Did I this? Did I that? Whatever. But I thought I owed him money, man, because he kicked the shit out of me that night, and like I literally said, like, I was like, I don't know if I owed him money. I was like being, you know, joking, you know, like, I don't know if I owe you money, like, you're beating me up for my lunch money, like, type shit. I was like, but it just seemed like everything was very snug and everything was very tight, and like that might just be his. We were fine.
Was
like,
everything
we
good
shook
afterwards?
hands afterwards, everything was good. He took a picture with my son. Like, it was so weird because like the whole time I was in there with him, I was thinking like, did I do something wrong to you?
You're like, what's going on here? Is this guy?
Yeah, because I mean, my thing is I work such a style too. Like, I'm that very like old school like Memphis style and shit like that. Where like I'm gonna hit you. The art of wrestling is that I'm not gonna touch you. It's really gonna register. Like, you're gonna be good. And some of those guys, like I said, it just depends on what side of the fence you're on, and what cloth you're cut from. But there are some guys that like, I'm not gonna sell for you if I don't feel it. You know what I'm saying? And like, and I've never been that guy. I'm like, bro, I'm feeling it, bro. Just give me with the knuckle like crazy for you. I'm like, but the thing is, it's like if you kick the shit out of me, I'm gonna kind of. And once again, this is the thing too. At the time, I'm like 25 years old. Now I'm 35. So this has been 10 years ago. So my thing is I look at things and I go, well, 25-year-old Brian reacted differently than 35-year-old Brian would have. And that's different from 18-year-old Brian, because 18-year-old Brian would have just let it go and whatever. 25-year-old Brian would have been like, yeah, maybe this and that, trying to be respectful. 35-year-old Brian, if you're roughing shit up with me that bad in the ring, I'm just going to beat the fuck out of you in front of everybody. And I'm going to stretch you, and I'm just going to make an example out of you in front of everyone in that audience. And back then, I had way too much respect. Still to this day, like I said, good match, like the guy, don't have any issues. But I was thinking when I left the ring, what the fuck did I do to that guy?
Yeah. Now knowing what you know now, there's no questioning if something like that happens. You know how to handle it or what direction it goes.
Yeah, it wouldn't have got that. That's the thing. Like, and I'm not trying to sound like a tough son of a bitch or anything like that or whatever. But it today that
was
would
experience. You know what I mean? Like you had the experience, and now, like you said, because
And like I said, back then it might have just been he didn't know me from Adam and whatever else and this and that. But like when people say, what was your toughest? That was my toughest opponent. Like I felt like I was having to fight for my life in that match, dude. I was like, holy hell. And it's just, back then I was like, holy hell, because I don't operate that way.
Do you have a favorite match that stands out
a couple.
to you?
I think that obviously the one that I always talk about every day of my life is my favorite opponent of all time is probably Jerry the King Lawler. I just huge Memphis fan, so like for me, it was big wrestling guys like Lawler. It was big wrestling guys like Nature Boy, Buddy Landell, Jimmy Valiant, that kind of shit. I've always wanted to wrestle Ricky Morton, never had the opportunity to. Really wish I could.
It could still happen. Could still happen.
It could. Never say never. Especially, I don't know that Robert's doing anything anymore. I would have loved to have wrestled the Rock and Roll Express together, but even if I could ever just have a match with Ricky, that would be awesome. I want a match with Wildfire Tommy Rich.
He's still wrestling
Tommy
too.
Rich. Yeah, that's on my bucket list. Like that's definitely like one of those like gotta make Wildfire Tommy Rich happen, gotta make Ricky Morton happen. I would have loved to have wrestled Bill Dundee. I mean, shit, there's so many guys that I wanted to wrestle. I got to wrestle Brutus the Barber Beefcake. I loved that match, and it was funny because that was at like it wasn't even like a real show. It was like a birthday party at like Gilbert Pro Wrestling Academy back then, and that was like 2012. And loved wrestling Brutus. Wish that more people would have seen that match because it was just such a cool match, and he was such a fun dude. And I had a couple different experiences with Brutus over the years, and he was always nice to me. He had some rough days where he might not have been as nice to his fans, in certain situations. But at the same time, such a Mary Lawler. I don't know. There's a couple like independent. I hate that freaking word too. Like I'm like, you're rather a pro wrestler or you're not. I hate hearing guys like it's almost like a discredit to hear guys say like he's an indie wrestler. Like I hate that word. But there's a couple independent guys that I really liked having matches with that like, certain guys get named and I'm like, yeah, I loved wrestling him. And if it feels like if I'm not dropping the Nunzios or I'm not dropping the Headbangers or I'm not dropping the Julio De Niro's or the this or the that or whatever, then people don't care. But I'm like, but there's so much good talent out there that I've worked with that I'm like, I liked this match with Mike Kite or I liked this with this guy or that guy or whatever. And I'm like, people always kind of look at that like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah. That's I guess it's for the deep cut folks out there that listen, they'll know. But
yeah,
a lot of people,
the diehard wrestling fans, you know.
Yeah, some people, and it blows my mind, honestly, and I feel like it's been really this year that's opened my eyes up, because I'm someone that kind of has like a small circle of people that I talk to wrestling about. Obviously, now that I've been doing this, it's been opening it up a lot more. But the small circle that I would talk to is kind of like some people that would have the same opinions as me. Definitely have different opinions, but mostly the same. But like, I didn't realize how many people out there, fans, only watch WWE or only watch AEW or both or whatever. But then like, they know nothing other than that, and nothing that's going on around them as far as indies or anything. I'm just like, it blows my mind, because it's like, unless it's the top two or maybe even TNA, it's like it's just like it doesn't exist.
The saddest.
Or I'm sure you've heard this before. Like you'll hear guys say, "Oh, they'll talk to a fan and they'll say, "Oh, I thought you stopped wrestling or something because you're not in WWE anymore." When they're in like AEW or TNA or something like that, it's like what is going on here? Like,
the saddest thing, man. I said, if I had $1 for every time that someone comes up to me and recognizes me in a Walmart or a fast food restaurant or whatever and says, "You wrestled the Viking Raiders," or "You wrestled Ryback," or "You this or that," or whatever, to most people, they would go, "Oh, well, at least they know who you are." And it's like, and that's cool to an extent, but it's almost over the years become detrimental, because I'm literally sitting there going, you are missing out on so much of my career, like the good shit in my career. You're missing out on so much. I ever wrestled 2 matches in my life. And I'm like, and I hate that, because I'm going, dude, I've had over 2,000 professional wrestling matches in my career. And I'm like, and I mean, my wife's the first one to say, he worked hard. He worked twice on Saturdays, twice on Sundays, this, that, whatever. And it's like, it's almost like a discredit, like when they go like, yeah, what was it like wrestling Ryback, or what was it like? Like, I love answering those questions because it's a part of my history, but it's not all of my history. So I'm like, I think that's the most upsetting thing, is those people are like, "Oh, that's so cool." They love to hear that. And I'm literally like, hey, I hope to God you're watching the banger that I had 6 weeks ago on USW Justice with so-and-so or whatever. And it's like, what's that? How do we find that? And it's like,
yeah. And I feel like those same people are the same ones that say shit like, oh, like Baron Corbin or Shotzi, to use as an example of recently released. Yeah. They were at a local show, and I was there, and I put up some footage of them, and I had so many comments of people saying, "Oh, here they are. Look at how many people are there. Nobody's there. They're in a high school gym, or they're here at this." It's like, and then you'll have everybody else arguing the other side, and then they just go back and forth. It's like, you'll never win with those type of people. You know what I mean?
No.
So it's like,
and the sad thing is, like, I tell people all the time. I mean, I just did a show here not too long ago. I won't say what the name of the promotion was or anything like that, but it was a small audience. The same thing. Like, it was a very small audience, but I still got paid. Like, and my wife even said that night, she's like, "Wow, you're just able to take care of the cell phone bill and this bill because you wrestled tonight, and you sold some merchandise and stuff." And I don't think that people realistically think of that. It's a real quick pot shot to say like, "Oh, they wrestled in front of 20 people tonight, or they wrestled in front of 50 people tonight." And it's like, yeah, but you don't realize, like, that's why, like, promoters don't get as much credit. Yeah, now we all know there's some sleaze bags out there and stuff like that, but like, promoters don't get as much credit as they actually deserve either, because the thing is, I don't know how anyone else operates. I could say that the guy that I worked for operated very nicely, and as soon as I came back through the curtain, he had my pay. But like, owning my own wrestling company and my wife and I running things the way that we run our stuff, like, you get your envelope the second that you arrive. So like, you get paid like the second that you arrive, like, and that's the thing too. There's pot shots, people will say like, "Oh, when he was doing Justice tapings, in the start, like, we weren't getting paid for this and that." Well, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you got to work up to this and that and blah, 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 and whatever. But like, when we're doing road shows and we're doing this and we're doing that, like, you're getting paid. And the second that you walk in, you're signing your release forms with my wife, and then my wife is handing you an envelope, and you're getting all of your money right away the second that you walk in the door, before the door is even open. If you're a pro wrestling promoter and you're not operating that way, and you're going, "I'll have to get you once the door opens, and we'll have to see if we make enough money," and be running a wrestling show. Like, simple as that. So like, that's one thing over the years we've always prided ourselves on. We've been running professional wrestling shows since 2010 between USW and MWF. And we have always operated that way. We've always had our money together before the shows even started, before the doors open. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. There was times where the houses were down, where I would literally tell people like, you know, hey, I know I said that I was going to give you $75, and I'll call you 2 days before the show even happens, and I'll say, could you take 50 instead of 75? You know, if not, and you say F you and I'm not going to show up to your show, that's fine. But at least you're not walking in the door and I'm not going, hey, I'm got to cut you right now. Like when you're protecting your money. So there's just a lot of like upstanding business things that I try to stick to and do. But that's one thing that everybody's always said about me is at least Brian's honest. Like he's never bullshit anybody, never stiffed anybody, never this, never that. And I'm like, you have to, like, your word is your bond. You
Absolutely.
know, you have to literally, you have to do that. And I think that's such a disconnect. It's like I said, I think that the average wrestling fan goes, they're wrestling in a high school gym. They're not making any money and this and that. And it's like, no, because if you're a good promoter, like you're going to make sure that money, you're fronting that money. You're taking the investment on the talent and you are literally trying to make sure ahead of time that everything is paid and taken care of. And then you hope to God that you can reimburse yourself from that money that you spent to make that show happen.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that's the way I conduct myself just in life and in business. It's like, you know, your word is your bond. Honesty is the best policy. And if you're not going to be able to come through on something, or, hey, I got to be able to, like you said, maybe can you take 50 instead of 75? Like, being upfront about shit like that, it always goes a lot longer than trying to swindle or wait till the day of, then it seems deceptive. It seems whatever, you know. But if you're always upfront, it's always going to be good, because we know, like you said, where Brian's at with us. He keeps it 100. So
that's why there's so many people that are willing to do business with me and work with me for that reason, because they know that I'm not going to lie to them. I'm not going to bullshit. If I say I'm going to have your money, I'm going to have your money. If I don't think I can afford it, then I'm not going to book you, because that's the thing. Like if I say, hey man, I think I might be able, like there's too many promoters that are comfortable with just kind of letting stuff slide. I'm not. Like if I don't have the money to book you, I'm not going to book you, you know? So like, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear just to get you to, you know, advertising flyers and this and that and whatever. Like,
and also, I'm sure, you know, in this business, it's like you said, the tell a friend type thing. You know, if you did do some shady shit, it's going to get around.
Where it's going to travel.
Small community. You know what I mean? So it's like shit where you do shady business, it gets out there. So,
well, the only thing that I disconnect with that is I tell people over the years, we always have the funny stories of like, I always say there's the wrestler stories and then there's the promoter stories. A lot of times you'll hear the guy that says, yeah, I worked for Brian Hardy one time and he didn't pay me and yada, yada, yada. And then like, finally, by the time word gets back to me, it's like this guy that's never, ever worked for me. The one thing I loved this years ago, I've got a file cabinet. I'm in my garage right now. I've got a file cabinet in my garage, and it's got every single legal document of every single professional wrestling show that I've ever hosted ever. And I've always made people sign for their paydays and everything like that over the years. So like I said, they signed their release forms, basically.
You got the paperwork.
Yep. And I'm like, so it's hilarious. So this one guy one time tried to say that like I didn't pay him or something like that, or I paid him the bare minimum or whatever. And then it's like, I said to my wife, go back to such and such date, go back to such and such paperwork. And she pulls out, and there's his signature on the paper, and it shows what he signed for, how much he got paid, all that stuff. And she's like, he's a lying sack of shit. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, but that to me, that's the telephone, telegram, tele-wrestler thing. That's the promoter side of it. The wrestler side of it is, like I said, when you hear someone say something like, oh, he was stiff with me in the ring and he was this and he was that. And then all of a sudden, like, come to find out, I literally am like my brother-in-law, the most famous story I always tell people, my brother-in-law, he's in the locker room listening to two people. Yeah, Brian Hardy's this. Yeah, Brian Hardy's that. And they didn't know that he was related to me. And he literally walks over and he goes, do you guys even know Brian Hardy? And the one guy's like, well, no, but I heard from so-and-so that he is this and that. And he's like, yeah, bro. He's like, that's my brother-in-law. He's like, one of the coolest guys in the world. He's like, and if he was here right now and heard you saying that shit, you'd be up against the wall, bro. Like and I'm like, but for me, like I said, it's the disconnect and the idea of like, your word is your bond. handshake means everything. If I don't like you and I don't trust you and I don't think that I could do good business with you, I won't shake your hand. I'm not by that like old school, everybody shakes everybody's hand in the locker. Like, I'm like, piss on that. Like, if I know you've been talking shit on me for months, I'll walk right by you and pretend you don't exist.
You know why.
Yeah, you know why. That's the thing. I always tell people, I'm like, I like everybody. Before we came on the air, I said, when you said, hey, is there one, anything we can't talk about? I said, there's one person that we can't talk about on here. I said, and that's because I don't want to give him the time of day. I said, but besides that, I got no problems with anybody. I said, now, if they got a problem with me, that's their own problem.
Yeah.
That's their problem, not my problem. So,
yeah, that's how I look at it too. It's like, I'm not going to waste my energy. And if they have a problem, that's their own wasted energy on something that, like you said, it's their own problem.
Yep.
All right, let's jump into the WWE part of it. So you had a chance to work as a enhancement talent in WWE. How did that opportunity come about? Because like you said, it wasn't because of your dad's name. It wasn't because of anything to do with that. You earned your chance to get up there.
Yeah. So like I said, I contacted them for years. I don't know if people knew that or not, but I contacted them for years and they literally just left me, as they say, unread. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, they were nice. They always responded back to me and would say like, no, sorry, Brian, not, we have nothing at this time or yada, 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 or get some, they have to cover their own ass from a certain aspect. They can't tell me to cut my hair. They can't tell me to gain weight. They can't, but when they say certain things,
they know what they're guiding you towards, sort of. Yeah.
Yes. So, and I respect that, like everybody knows what they're looking for or what they're not looking for. I know what I'm looking for and what I'm not looking for when I'm booking talent. Yeah. So like I've never held that against them, but in 2012, I had a match with Jerry Lawler the night before the 2012 Rumble. He was a surprise entrant that year, which was pretty funny because the night before he wrestled me in Glen Burnie.
That's awesome.
Like I love wrestling history. Like I said, there's some things I really am good at remembering. Then there's some things that I'm like, I don't really remember that too much.
Same. I feel like sometimes I'm like a little bit of a historian with certain shit, but then it's like once it gets to a certain spot, I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember shit from that.
Don't ask me anything after like 2004 because I think at that I think like 2002 I started switching kind of to TNA a little bit when they were doing the Wednesday night pay-per-views.
Yes, I love the Wednesday nights.
And I think at that point in time, I went from WWE and shifted over to TNA. But I was like, it was so crazy because when it comes to anything before then, like from like the 50s, like the 1950s, all the way up until like probably, like I said, 2000, 2001, you ask me questions and I'm like, fire. I'm ridiculous. I can't tell you what I had for lunch yesterday, but I could tell you any of that kind of stuff. And then stuff about my own career, I'm like, maybe this is hit and miss. And I don't care as much as I do like about my career as I do like with something with Bret Hart or Terry Funk or Hulk Hogan or something like that. But back to what you're saying, basically in a nutshell, I wrestled Jerry Lawler and I thought to myself, like, if anything comes from this, this will be the biggest. And this is my version of going to college. So, kids bank on themselves. They pay for their college tuitions to become a doctor or a lawyer or a this or a that. I was a promoter that happened to bring Jerry Lawler in and wrestle Jerry Lawler to enhance my image of I can hang with these guys. The backstory to that night was that Jerry Lawler, Axel Rotten was in my locker room. Once again, God rest his soul, one of my mentors. I love him. I miss him.
Great guy.
There are some things that I don't agree with. And I always tell people Brian Knighton and Axel Rotten were two different people. And I got to know both of them. And I loved Brian Knighton, the human being. And I fucking hated Axel Rotten, the person, a lot of times. And I had to be a babysitter for a lot of years,
Yeah.
I never judge people on that. Like he had his demons and I still till this day, there's not a day that goes by that I don't talk about him and have a lot of good to say about him. But unfortunately at times
he keeps coming up on the Bingohall. This is like 3 episodes in a row now where we talked about it. It's been you, Bob, and Mickey Knuckles. We're just speaking. Yeah. So
I have so many Axel stories, and like I said, 90% of them are good. 10% of them are really, 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 really bad. But like I said, at times I felt like, man, what a great mentor. What a way to be under a learning tree. You know, of all the people that I could have picked,
he had such a mind for the business.
Yeah, he was the guy. But there was a lot of times that I had to play babysitter, and I was not a fan of that. And it got so bad, like at the end, towards the end, and I hate how his story ended. But it got so bad towards the end where I used to tell people I would dodge him in like the Walmart. Like if I knew that he was walking through the Walmart, I was praying to God he wasn't going to see me. Like I'd go down the other aisle.
There was a point towards, it was right before he was getting really bad towards the end. It was the same situation where he would just show up at our house. He would show up at our house because Dad brought him over one time and he knew where we lived, and he'd just show up, and it was like, you can't deny him. You know what I mean? He got to come out, hang out for a couple of hours, but it was like, he was just real bad off. And I think he was trying to like keep out of things or keep himself occupied and hang around people. But it was just like, you'd see him for a little bit, then he'd disappear, and you don't want to see him for a while. And like you said, they just show up, or you bump into him, you try to avoid him, but it's like, yeah.
So on that particular night, and once again, God love him, I miss him. But on that particular night, boy, was he fucking politicking for himself in my locker room, and he literally in my own locker room, he was politicking with Jerry Lawler to try to wrestle Jerry Lawler that night. He was like, Brian, just give me your executioner mask, and I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna pretend I'm Dusty Rhodes.
We'll have some shit together. Though when he's like, he's got the whole thing worked out.
Yeah, dude, he had it hook, line, and sinker. And I'm thinking, bro, I did not just pay Lawler this much money.
Did you start to think about it for a second? Yeah, like maybe.
It could be good, it could be good.
He's convincing.
But he was trying to sell me, man. But I literally was like, no. So actually, if you ever, I don't know if, like I said, if that footage will ever, come about, I know I have it on DVD here, but if that footage ever makes its way onto YouTube or anything like that, you can see me walking out the curtain and screaming at him while I'm walking out of the curtain. Because he's literally going, it's not too late, kid. It's not too late. You can turn around. I'll fucking go out and wrestle Jerry Lawler, and you're going to have a great, event. But if you go out there, you're going to stink up the joint with him. Well, what he did was he told Lawler that I was unsafe in the ring, and that I was this and I was that and I was yada, 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 to the point where he buried me before I walked out to wrestle.
Was he pissed at you or something? Because
there's sometimes that he just really wanted it to be about him, and it's the nature of the beast in this business, unfortunately. Yeah. But for me, I just literally sat there and I was like,
so Jerry was
he was on some shit that night, dude. He was very skeptical to wrestle. Yeah. And we went in there and he spent like the first 10 minutes just cutting a promo. I asked him if he could go to the ring and shit on the MWF arena, which was the Solly Road Orchard Beach Banquet Hall.
I went to Solly Elementary. I can't believe you brought that up.
Yeah. So we were there, and we were there every month. And the thing was, I said, please shit on this place as if you did with ECW in the Bingohall in Philly. And he said, okay, cool. And he went out there, and he tore the Ravens up, and he tore this and that and whatever else. And I was like, God, this is great. Like, this is 1997 Jerry Lawler at its finest right now. And he was just you could tell he was terrified to lock up with me because Axel had scared him so bad into thinking like
that's crazy.
That I didn't know what the hell I was doing, to the point where we get in there and 35 minutes, it literally was lock up, and I heard him go slam, and boom. And then that was it, and whatever. And we're going, and now we're dancing for 35 minutes, and everything is just nice and smooth. And now I know that I was doing my job when every single one of the boys has now left the locker room, and they're all standing out by the fans watching me and Lawler. And I'm like, hell yeah, like this is awesome. So now we get through the whole entire match, and at the very end, there's a famous picture of me and him shaking hands. And I literally said to him, I stuck out my hand and I said, look, I know you don't want to be here today. I said, I know that you have been scared into thinking that, you shouldn't have even wrestled me or this, that. I said, but this moment meant a lot to me. And he turns around and he looks at me, and then he looks down at my hand, and he looks at me again, and he shakes my hand. And then I go to spin around, and then he stops and he sticks out his hand and shakes my hand and says, kid, that was great. That was great. And I said, thanks, sir. And we walked in the back. He hugged me, and then everything was good. His whole demeanor towards me changed. Everything was perfect. But I had to prove to I had to prove to him, he was one of my idols as a kid. I had to prove to one of my idols that I was worth being in the ring with.
Yeah, it had to be definitely. Axel had him like psyching himself out that if he was getting in there with somebody dangerous or something. That's crazy though. Axel was on some shit.
When you think about the age, I was 21 at the time and Lawler was 62.
And then also, like you said, he's wrestling in Royal Rumble the next day. So he's probably also thinking that too, like, oh, fuck, if this kid hurts me, it's going to fuck that up, Yes. So, yeah. I'm sure
so that match, that was a little insight to that match. But that match led to a few months later, me getting a call from WWE. And it was weird because I had not messaged them. And my whole thing was I told everybody, if I have to credit anybody for my in ever at WWE, it would be Kikoa, the Flying Hawaiian. He literally years ago had done like some extra work where he was like on Raw with Maurice acting like a karate instructor or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then he wrestled on Superstars against, it was like Lance Archer and freaking, I think Kurt Hawkins or something like that or whatever, like a tag match. But him and I wrestled each other in Allentown a lot. And I'd be like, dude, what's your connection with WWE? Like I've done that to a couple.
What's the secret? Yeah,
a couple close guys I cared about over the years. I felt like so mad because I feel like the bubble just bursted open, and there was a specific talent that used to always tell people it is so easy to be an extra at WWE. Anybody can do it, and it's like saying that just demoralized and devalued everything that anyone that worked hard for did. Because the thing is, it is easy if you got guys that are just exposing the business and just opening up and giving everyone their contacts and this and that. And yeah, you get a car and you get a car and you get a car, like the Oprah Winfrey style shit. But if you keep that under wraps and you literally cling to what you have and you don't share it with everybody, then no, not everybody can get their foot in the door there, and some people will use that as a tagline and say, man, he's like withholding information with us. Well, not everybody should be privileged to that information, and that's the way I protected the business over the years. So like if I gave you a contact to WWE, like straight to John Cone or somebody else like that or whatever, it was because I believed that you belonged to me.
Yeah.
If I didn't give you a contact there was a reason why. There was plenty of times where guys would ask me stuff and I'd go, man, I don't really know anybody up there. I don't really, like I totally kayfabe them and just be like, yeah, man, I don't really know anybody up there. I don't have any friends up there. Realistically, I've got like 20 friends up there. Even till this day, I still have friends that work for WWE, but I don't want to give out my contacts to people. You know? And I'm like, so with me, mad props and love and respect still to this day to the Flying Hawaiian Kikoa, because he literally gave me contact information at the time for WWE. I don't want to get him heat. Hopefully that doesn't ever come back and bite him from people that were agents 20 years ago or whatever. But it was so sad because like they finally called. When they finally called, I was working at a biolab. And I'm sitting there filling vials. And I mean, I'd had that job for 11 years and I was filling vials, and all of a sudden I get a call and it's a lady from like the office. And she says, William Regal would like you to come for a tryout. Are you available to come to the Nassau Coliseum in Long Island? Or are you also available to come to Baltimore the next day after that? And I'm like, abso-freaking-lutely, like this and that, whatever. And back then it kind of was tryouts. Nowadays it's
not like that anymore.
Yeah, I haven't been there in about 5 years, and I've got my own reasons behind it and stuff like that. It's a personal choice, because still till this day, WWE has contacted me multiple times, and we just cannot come to terms on certain scenarios that I feel very passionately about. So, and I like doing my own thing, honestly. But the thing is there was a situation where I said, okay, cool. We showed up back then. You used to have tryouts earlier in the day. They'd let you get in the ring, let you wrestle around. You've got John Cena and Randy Orton and Paul Heyman and this person, that person, everybody all around ringside. So it's like the way I always described it is it's almost like, and their catering is the same way, but it's almost like being in school and having your lunch tray and not knowing where to fit in with people. And you're going in to sit down and you're like, I can't sit with them because they're the jocks. I can't sit with them because they're the punks. I don't fit in with anybody. I'm just going to sit by myself, So I learned at a very, very young age. The very first time I ever went to WWE, 2012, I was just about to turn 21 years old, like a month shy of 21. And I literally was like, okay, I'm going to try to wrestle and work out whatever I can with them. And I had really, really, really good tryouts both days. And William Regal, once again, amazing. Dean Malenko, amazing. Like, there's so many guys that were so good to me up there that didn't have to be, and they were awesome. There was a couple guys that were real pricks to me up there that literally, like, I have talked about them in my book. I have a book on Amazon, Wrestling with Life, Rocking All Night, the Brian Hardy story.
Nice.
It's available. I talk about things in certain chapters of my book that I'm like, this guy or that guy acted like they were like the nicest guys in the world and did this and did that. And they were like the biggest pieces of shit, like they literally didn't want me there. And it was like one of those, like, we don't want him here because we don't want him to get signed, because if he gets signed, then it's going to take away from whatever we're doing and yada, 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 this and that.
Yeah, their own interest. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you got to whatever, but for equally as many bad people, like if there was like 5 bad people I ran into, there was like 25 good people. So you got to look at it that way too. Like, there is more good in that business than there is bad. You just got to know how to wean out the turds and find the right ones. And yeah, man, I tell you, the coolest person was Arn Anderson, because Arn Anderson had saw a lot in me, and he said, hey kid, I think we're going to have something for you tomorrow in Baltimore. And there's a big rib. There's a huge story in my book about the very first night when I was at the Nassau Coliseum. I was supposed to wrestle John Moxley in a dark match. And at the time, he was just coming up from FCW to the main roster. And he wasn't with the Shield or anything like that yet. He was just Mox with his hair and a pair of trunks, and stuff like that. And they pulled a bunch of ribs on me. There was an agent there that was like really horrible, that didn't like me, and he treated me like crap, and he treated a lot of other talent like crap there too. And that's why all these years later, when I speak of John Cone, I love John Cone, because John Cone was always amazing to me. Such a good guy, John Cone went to bat for me so many times that I was like, I've got nothing but awesome things to say about him. But the agent previous to him, man, I wouldn't touch that guy with a 10-foot pole, because he was just a piece of crap. And he no longer works at WWE, and there's a reason that he doesn't work at WWE, but there's so many people that would tell horror stories about him. And he really messed with my chances on that very first night. And I said, okay, whatever. And then the next night in Baltimore, Arn Anderson had told me the night before in Nassau that they would probably have something for me the next night, which ended up being my WWE debut match against Ryback. And which was awesome. I teamed with Black G's in a 2-on-1 handicap match against Ryback. Originally, it was going to be a 3-on-1 that night. There was a wrestler in the Allentown area by the name of Joey Lugo, very talented guy, Ricky Martinez, and he was supposed to be the third guy in that match. Nobody knows that, but they ended up taking him off and then just kept me and Black G's on against Ryback. So there's even times in that match where you hear the commentators, like I think Booker T and Michael Cole, Booker T would say like, this is an appetizer for Ryback. He wants 3, feed him 3, and this and that. And they were trying to build to the idea of like Ryback's going to get 3 guys up on him. It just physically was not possible. So we tried, rehearsals during the day and stuff like that, but so much different stuff leading up. There's a million stories of that weekend, but that led to me constantly getting different responses from WWE from 2012 to 2019, on and off. And a lot of times the ball was in my court. And I tell people that. I say the ball was in my court a lot of times. If I wanted to go, I could have gone. There were a lot of times people were like, you're freaking crazy. I still show people emails to this day, like where they would say, hey, Brian, could you be in Baltimore at this day? Or could you be in Virginia or here or there? No, sorry. I'm done with the wrestling business. I'm bitter. I'm this, I'm that. I was very brutally honest, and I'm like, people are like, you're turning down WWE. Like, what is your problem? I was real. I wasn't vibing it at the time. And I've always been a feeling of, don't screw up someone else's opportunity. There's somebody out there that's working equally as hard, if not harder than you. And if your heart isn't in it and you're not willing to do it, then don't do it and let someone else have that opportunity, because they may be working that hard. So how unfair would it have been if I was so brutally bitter to the wrestling business and I'm just there going through the motions to collect
the motions, yeah.
but there's a guy there that really wants to be there. There's been times like that. Then there's been times where I really have been that guy that has busted my ass to get to where I've needed to be and stuff like that. And then I go there and I get there and I'm literally thinking, maybe I don't belong here, even though I feel like I belong here, but maybe I don't belong here. But then I look around at everybody else in the locker room and I'm going, I work harder than him. I work harder than him. I work harder than him. So I'm like, I obviously deserve to be here, but the word deserve gets thrown around a lot too at times. And it makes me go like, everything is an opportunity and you earn an opportunity. You're not owed. You don't deserve. You don't anything. You work for what you get. But, that's always been my mindset. So I'm like, the way I have to stop myself sometimes when I word some stuff, I'm like, I've earned an opportunity to be there. Yeah. I didn't deserve it. I wasn't owed it, this and that, whatever. And as long as you look at things in the wrestling business that way, you'll be let down, but you really won't be let down a day in your life because you really are in control of your own career. So,
yeah, I think that, that deserved word gets thrown around a lot, like you said, and especially when people self-imply it, you know what I mean? It kind of gets a little hairy, so.
Yeah, that's
good.
I was just gonna say I don't deserve shit, it's if you work for it, it happened. The universe, I believe, has a way of finding whatever you need. It'll provide it to you at certain times. So.
Absolutely, I'm definitely with that. What was your experience like backstage there? It was good. Like very as far good. As getting things together before matches and stuff.
Yeah, very good. I've never really had like I said, I've never really had a bad backstage experience. I've had hella funny backstage experiences that people would be like, that's a great story or this or that or whatever. I think the only thing bad I experienced was, like I said, there was two guys in the like the main area, like where the ring was, standing ringside, and there was an agent. And the funny thing is, I won't mention names on this, but like there was an agent that everybody considered to be a bully, and nobody wanted to be around that guy, and everybody hated that guy. And you've heard a million horror stories about said individual, right? Mm-hmm. Then you've got two guys over here, and one of those guys is still till this day somebody who is a part of the Don't Be a Bully, Be a Star campaign. And there was his tag team partner at the time. And the craziest craziest thing about the story is that the guy that everybody said is a bully and they can't stand him, and there's all these horror stories and stuff, that guy defended me to these guys that everybody thinks are the coolest dudes in the world and the nicest guys in the world and the this and the that and the yada, yada, yada. So being politically correct, I won't say the word that he called me, but it started with an F. And in this very woke society that we live in and everybody's cancel culture and all that stuff, I won't say the word, but it's a number of letters. And he called me this F word. And I'll put it this way: it wasn't fucker. We'll put it that way.
No, we got you.
So there's I'm covering my ass from a legal standpoint.
No, you're good.
This guy literally calls me this word and says, and he was referring to my boots, and he said, like, look at his boots, man. He looks like you know what, and blah 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 and whatever. And at that point in time, this agent is standing by the ringside, and he turns around and he goes, hey, like that, and screams and yells at them. So once again, that guy might fit the narrative of their story. The narrative of their story is that guy's a person and this and that and whatever. He goes, this guy is not under contract with us. He said, and you two are being bullies right now, and yada, yada, yada. I said, do you want that guy right there to go back down to the independents and tell everybody how these two contracted guys are such pieces of shit and blah, 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 and this and that? He said, get your act together from a company standpoint and yada, 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 and this and that. And like I said, the guy who called me that name, this is hilarious. Once again, no heat, bro. No heat. The guy that called me that name came out on the Ellen DeGeneres show 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later. So I literally could not stop laughing because I literally was like, how are you going to call me that?
He was projecting. He was projecting.
Went on the Ellen show, bro. Like, you went on the Ellen show. And so, yeah, it just, there's certain guys, and once again, never ran into that guy in my life ever again. If I did, I wouldn't even, give him the time of day. I'd walk right past him and just go on about my business. But I literally was like, how is that possible? And then the other guy, who was your buddy, that, was your former tag team partner, is now Don't Be a Bully, Be a Star campaign. And I'm like, wow, like, you want to talk about the craziness of the business of smoke and mirrors. The guys that you think are the coolest dudes in the world can sometimes be the biggest turds. And the guys that are the quiet dudes that keep to themselves and stuff like that, they're the ones that everybody goes around and talks about and says, oh, that guy's a jerk. That guy's a this and that and whatever.
Yeah. Sorry, there might be somebody's dog barking. I think it's my neighbor's dog. I wanted to ask you about, it wasn't WWE, but you were in PWI Illustrated. You were number 500. There was a documentary that was out there that Big Dust made where he was targeting all the PWI 500 winners. You were one of them. The match never happened. I know how things went down from the documentary standpoint. How were things from your perspective?
This is a good question, by the way. I've never been. I like these because I've never been asked this question.
Hey, I have a touch of Nardwire in my interviewing, so I like to find little things that might not be the normal.
I love it. I've never touched on it ever in an interview, but like I said, I don't have any problems with it either. It was funny because once again, no ill will towards that guy or anything like that. There was a tough situation a number of months. I think like leading up to that, I don't remember. It was like the back and forth of like, we were going to schedule the match. We were going to have the match. We were going to this and that. Now, when they first pitched the documentary to me, I was like, yeah, like whatever you guys need. The way that the documentary was pitched to me, I couldn't tell if they were being serious about it. And most people would say, like, once again, and it just depends on what side of the fence you're on.
I felt the same way watching it in the beginning, just to add into that. Yeah.
Yes. So the thing is like, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So you don't know if it's going to be a burial of the masses of every 500 that there's ever been. We're going to make fun of them. We're going to treat them like shit. We're going to this, we're going to that, we're going to yada, yada, yada. Or you don't know if it's like, there's legitimacy to it, because here's the thing. And I posted this the other day on my Facebook page. If you really took the time to do the math, I don't want to pull out some Scott Steiner math on people and stuff like that. But if you really took the time to do the math, there is, for 110% sure, we're going to throw in every single wrestler of every single major company in the world. And then after that, we're going to start floating into the backyard guys. We're going to start floating into the deathmatch guys. We're going to start floating into every wrestler that you can find. In the world, there is definitely 1 million professional wrestlers, okay? Hypothetically speaking, let's just say that there are 50 legitimate wrestlers in every state in the United States of America. We won't even go into Japan or Mexico or any of that kind of stuff, the UK. We'll stay away from all that real fast. Just in the United States, 50 states times 50 wrestlers. Do the math on that real fast. So let's just hypothetically say that 50 states, 50 wrestlers literally gets people to the idea of who is legitimate. That math on that is 2,500. So there are at least 2,500 legitimate professional wrestlers in the United States. 2,500. We can sit here all day long and talk about who's not legitimate, who's not professional, who's backyard, who's deathmatch, who's this and that. But 2,500 legitimate pro wrestlers, 50 states, at least 50 wrestlers per state. If they're creating a PWI 500, then that means that they literally have to siphon through and select the best 500 out of those 2,500 that actually exist in the world. So the thing is, and that, like I said, and that's not even touching into Japan, Mexico, UK, all that kind of stuff. So at that point in time, I literally am sitting there going, one time in my career, I got number 500 of at least 2,500 of the best wrestlers in the freaking world. Once again, everybody can decipher what they want. Some people will say it's PWI 500. It's all about who you know. It's all about this. It's all about that. It's never about the talent. that's not up for us to decide. That's up to, I guess, the guy that freaking, edits the magazine, at the end of the day. Like, but the thing is it was like, I was at the very beginning when I was contacted about it, it turned into one of those, like, I looked at my wife and I said, I don't know if this is a rib or if this is legitimate. I'm like, but if it's legitimate, then this is very cool. If this is them just trying to bash everybody, that was number 500 and make it a comedy and a spoof and a joke, well, then you obviously at that point need something more to get yourself over that you had to come up with this idea to do this. So I said, whatever you need. I was very kind about it at first. Whatever you guys need, you just let me know.
Were you kind of like testing the waters in the beginning to kind of
most definitely? I was scared shitless.
Like, you're like, how, like, is this guy, like, yeah, I guess you were kind of weary on how far we're going to go until this is you're going to know at some point whether he's fucking with me or if this is.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like I say it. And like I said, I'm not scared shitless in that sense, but scared shitless because you just don't know nowadays.
Yeah.
Like it's like I knew I did my homework, and this isn't a knock or a jab or anything. I did my homework on you before even coming on to this podcast. And I literally went, wow, like my friend Bronwyn's been on here or Bob Starr or this person or that person. And this guy's got his shit together. Like, it's a professional show. It looks good. This and that and whatever. So I do that all the time. So it was like one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm hoping to God that I can reach out a hand and extend it and that everything will be cool. But if this gets weird and I don't feel comfortable with it, or if it gets too out there, then I'm going to say fuck it and throw my hands in the air and be gone. So I was under the impression we were going to have the match. I heard that he was having some of the matches with the 500 guys and stuff like that. And he's like, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll put you over. And like I said, I don't even care, dude. Like, I would have lost to you or whatever. I don't give a shit. Wrestling's a work. It is what it is. So I'm like, at the end of the day, as long as my pay envelope's there, I'm getting paid, whatever, we're good. We're rock and roll. And a lot of times, like I said, even if the money isn't fantastic from the promoter end of the spectrum, you as a sole proprietor, as an individual talent, need to go the extra mile to market yourself, merchandise yourself, make your money off your 8x10s and your gimmicks at the merch table and stuff like that. So if you aren't happy with what the promoter is willing or not willing to pay you, then at least you can also have a second avenue of revenue. So I was planning all this stuff in my head of, okay, we can make this work. Even if I'm willing to work with them, I'm willing to do this, I'm willing to do that. I go the extra mile and invite them to my media conference that I was having for the relaunch of USW. And, and that was one of those situations where it's like, yeah, come on in. I'll get posters printed, all this, all that. I had like all these really professional, like 13 by 19 posters printed of me and him and this and that and whatever and yada, yada, yada. He has a situation arise. I won't talk about that. I don't need to, get into details of that, but he has a situation arise, personal matter in his life. That's fine. Like at that point in time, I said, okay, fine. No problems. All good. Rock and roll. No issues. After that, it turned into like, we're going to reschedule the match. We're going to this, we're going to that. There was a promoter that, once again, I had known for years that I trusted with the idea of this. Now, this promoter ended up getting like some heat with me, even though they were all trying to orchestrate it. And I'm like, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Too much going on right now. There's, this guy is saying this guy's saying that. And then I started feeling uncomfortable about it. And I'm like, this person cancels, and I'm the only one that's still saying I'm up for it. I'm the only one going, I'm still up for it, but then it got to the point where I'm going, the more and more that people were doing stuff, the less and less I'm starting to back out now. Now I'm starting to go, hey, I this is some Bush League shit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to, this and that and whatever. And they released the documentary. And when they released the documentary, I felt like a couple of things. I felt when I watched it, I saw the spot and I looked at my wife and I said, this and that and whatever. And I was almost like threatened. I was threatened by like one of the producers of the film or something, or one of his buddies or something like that. And he was like, I've got voice recordings from you and I'll air them. And at that point in time, I literally was like, fucking do it then, like at that point in time, like go ahead and do it, bro. Like, because like you're being so unprofessional right now that I stand on where I'm standing at the moment. Like, I don't want to be a part of this shit at all. And I could have told him, I could have sent him a cease and desist and said, if you even put my fucking name on that documentary, like I'll sue your asses and this and that and whatever. But I felt like it wasn't even worth it at the end of the day. Like I was just like, okay, whatever. They're going to do their documentary. They're going to paint me however they wanted to. And like the line, like I said, that the guy used was I told Dustin to put this way in the documentary, so that way you didn't seem like a bad guy and blah 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 blah, when in reality we could have just exposed you and aired this and aired that and whatever. And at that point in time I felt like, do it, like go ahead and do it. But then at the same time, like, yes, you will be getting a call from my attorney, because my wife doesn't fuck around with that shit. My wife would have had somebody on the phone right away, boom, and it would have been up and down that fucking quickly. But like I said, once again, I didn't have anything to hide. It wasn't like, like my talks were all real. Like,
yeah, I think in the way that you came across, even the voice messages that they did expose, like, I thought, like, watching it, like, oh, here it comes, they're gonna show Brian, like, berating him or being like, oh, fuck you or whatever. But you handled it still with class.
I was trying, and that's
because
they
you
were
got
burning.
burnt. You got burnt on the posters. You
Yes.
got burnt on putting all that effort and everything into it on your side, where they they didn't pull their side of the bargain, and it was like, damn, like, Brian still handled that like cool, even though you could have been like total dickhead about it, in my opinion. And that's why I was like,
there was a couple of like diehard like Brian Hardy fans, and once again, I know people don't think that exists in the world, but there was like a couple diehard Brian Hardy fans that had got word of that, and man, they started going ham on those guys. And like, I felt bad because once again, I'm always going, keep my name out of the shit. Like, I don't have anything to do with any of that kind of stuff. Like, I got 7 kids. I don't have time for any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My wife and I have been together since the time I was 15. Like, I don't got no time for any of that stuff. I'm here like trying to tend to a house and tend to all my real life stuff. And they're in the wrestling world, like, oh, we're going to show him and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm like, just do it, bro. Like, don't talk about it.
It's this big on the radar, like, of what you have going on. Yeah. That's like I said. I feel like you came across like really, like, I won't say good, but like better than I guess how they could have painted it. But like you said, like, I got nothing to hide. So whatever they put out there, I just feel like it didn't hurt them, but like it made you look like it was, you know what I mean? Like, you were the one that was pulling the weight and doing everything. And then they kind of like dropped the ball, but
it was that much more practical. I told him, I said, look, like what he said to me, like I said, I won't say it, but what he said to me was so serious enough that I literally went, if that's the truth and you're not bullshitting me, then I really feel sorry for you. And I really hope to God that you feel better. And I hope that everything is rock and roll. But if you're lying to me and bullshitting me and just trying to fuck with me like people do all the time in the wrestling business, then I feel no sorrow for you. I feel no remorse for you. And you and your little clique of buddies can get fucked, because at the end of the day, like, there's one thing I have is zero time for bullshit. So,
yeah, I think I felt the same way in the beginning of when I first stumbled across that. And, I was like, is this like a setup to like mock all the 500s or whatever? But then it seemed like it was a legit, like they were trying to paint everyone in a good picture, and I liked it. I think
they did a good job with it, and that's the thing. And like I said,
that's why I was like, damn, I wish it would have happened,
and that's the thing. Like, as a man's man, like, I'll sit here and say they did a good job with the production value of the documentary. I think they did good with it. I think some of the stuff was more so at times, like I said, the concept of the story behind it wasn't necessarily as focused on the 500 as it should have been, because at times it was just focused on a couple buddies like going and doing their life and shit like that. And I'm kind of like, like, people don't really want to see that part of it. Like, they want to see the real shit, but the idea was there. And at the end of the day, I wish the match could have happened. I wish I could have been a part of it in a better light. Like I said, it ended terribly. Like, it ended like like I said, a lot of what was said in a lot of shit. Like, I remember, one of the dudes, I won't even mention his name because he doesn't deserve the time either, but like, one of the dudes like went ham on me one day. I was on my way to like do an autograph signing in Hagerstown, Maryland, at like one of the malls there or whatever. And I'm literally walking in with like a box of 8x10s, and like I had like one of my kids on my, holding my hand or whatever. And I literally like, I'm just getting all these messages. And I like, once again, I was still trying to be professional. I cuss a lot, dude. I cuss like a sailor. I tell people all the time, like, it's not, that's why I said, like, I was like, what can I say? What can I say on here?
You're good.
I use the word fuck as a sentence enhancer. Like, I don't even use it like, maliciously and this and that. But like, if I'm, I'm a lot more of a voice person on Facebook than I am. Like, I hate typing. I mean, I'll type till the end of time. I took 2 typing classes, but like, I'd much rather just hit the button, talk and say what I got to say to you, and then just let it be. if you, once again, the context, take it how you want it. You know, at the end of the day, like if you feel like I was being malicious and downright evil to you and this and that and whatever, yeah. But the thing is, at the end of the day, once again, I would never go out of my way to disrespect you. So why the fuck would you be, you know, saying this or that about me and all? It was, I just couldn't wait to wipe my fucking hands with those guys.
With the whole situation, yeah.
Yes, and just literally say like, okay, like I hope that I never run into them again, because if I do, it probably won't fucking be pretty. And I openly told them that, like, it won't be pretty if I run into you again in person, because everybody is a tough guy keyboard warrior until they actually have to own their shit and say something to somebody's face. And I don't got them doing it. And I think that the people that know me know that I don't got them doing it, because one thing I've told people over the years, and it is scary, dangerous, I have done everything I have ever wanted to do in my life, ever. So my thing is like, that is a scary place to be in your life when you have literally accomplished everything that you have ever set out to do, because there are certain point in times in your life where then you have no regrets and you have no qualms with like handing somebody their ass on a certain
nothing to
day.
lose, so to say.
Yeah, like, and that's what I'm like. If the next chapter of my story, I don't want it to be, but if the next chapter of my story happens to be in orange behind 2 cell bars, like, then I just want people to know I didn't pick that day.
Yeah.
That person picked that, you know, like I just followed through with what they wanted the story to be. So
yeah, like you said, unfortunately it didn't happen, but yeah, I thought that was I wanted to bring that up because I was like, what is the story, the true story here? So
I think I think they did a good job with it. You know, I still feel very offended, like I said, by certain ways that they treated me and certain ways they act to me. I always try to be a class act to everybody, and I wanted the same respect out of them that I was giving them. And then when they turned and flipped the whole script and kind of dicked me, I was kind of like, I don't have any more energy for them.
Yeah. I was, after it had happened, I thought that there was still like, I thought there was going to be a twist where they finally, that you guys made it happen or something. I was waiting for that to be the ending, but it was like how it ended. I was like, oh, okay, I guess
that would have been cool, you know, at the time, like from a fan's point of view, that would have been great.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I think if they like saw this interview and said like, hey man, we can make this work, I'd be like, get fucked, you know?
That's funny. All right, let's switch back to MWF for a minute. Sure. How did MWF first come together, and what was the role that you played in the creation of it?
All right, so the backstory to MWF, which was freaking hilarious, is USW, the very first USW show that was ever run in 2010, was it was pretty much a 110% idea of myself and a friend. I won't name the friend's name. But the person was very popular in the Maryland wrestling scene between like 2010, 2012. I think he might have stopped wrestling around like 13 or 14. But the thing was, lifelong friend. Still have nothing but good vibes towards him even till this day. Some bad shit happened. I speak my truth. I mean, he might have his own version of the truth and stuff, and that's fine. But once again, reasons like this that I'm on this podcast is to say what actually happened. He was very much so about the idea of, I want to be a wrestling promoter with you. Now, anybody that knows me knows I don't do business partners. It was so funny today because I was talking to my dad on the phone earlier, and my dad said, he goes like, so who's your business partner for the new school? And I said, like, my wife. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I don't partner with people. Like, I don't do money backers. I don't do this. I don't do, like, it's different if you want to be a sponsor. You know, you want to be a sponsor. You want to throw me, you know, $1,000 to bring all the wrestlers to your bar after the show. And we're going to,
you're not going to tell me how to run the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, there's a difference between a sponsor and someone that's trying to be your business partner and that wants to tie into everything. I never have had a business partner, and I never will have a business partner. And this story is the reason why I don't have a business partner. Pretty much this guy, you know, fronts all these ideas to me, yada, 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 literally lays them all out my table. We should do this. We should do that. We should do this. We should do that. And then all of a sudden it's time to pay up. And before you know it, I'm literally at the time, I'm a 19-year-old kid. First wrestling show I ever promoted was at 19 years old.
Damn.
I'm a 19-year-old kid, and I have a $10,000 bullshit. You not? I could pull out file folders right now. I have a $10,000 budget on my very first ever show.
Damn.
Out of that $10,000, he comes to me and says, I got a sponsor for $100 from a glass company. And I said, okay, now I've got to come up with the $9,900. And I'm literally like, what in the fuck is going on here? So I literally said to my grandmother, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Once again, grandma loves me. RIP, love her. But man, she was furious. And it was almost like one of those, like, Brian, you should know better type things, but I'm going to bail you out again type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So grandma comes in clutch, and I, once again, at the time I'm making a couple $1,000 working at the bio lab and shit like that and stuff. So I literally, front every dollar that I have, and she puts in the remaining amount of whatever I don't have. But, the story that's told is that this guy, like it's been, and not necessarily out of his mouth. I don't know, but from other people,
hyperbole, I guess.
Yeah. A bunch of people in the wrestling business, they were partners. And, Brian, left him high and dry and took all the credit and success of USW and this. And I'm thinking, the fucking guy didn't invest $1 of his own money. Like, his wife would have never allowed him to invest $1 of his own money. So my wife is crazy and will allow me to invest whatever I want, like, with the hope and return of the fact that it will pay off. But yeah, no, my grandma came in clutch big time for that. And we ran the first USW show. After that day, I was so angry. There was many of cooks in the kitchen, as I say. There were people that I really didn't trust, didn't know, and everybody had an opinion in the wrestling business. You should do it this way. You should do it this way. You should this, you should that. I think I started learning in my later years. I started getting pissed off and taking my binder and throwing it down on the table and going, these are all the bills. If you want to pay all this, then you can decide how you want this show to go.
Yep.
If not, I don't want to fucking hear it. And that was very heartbreaking to have to do that at times, because there was a lot of people that I loved that were around me that I did trust, but I almost had to treat them the same exact way that I would treat the people that I didn't trust, where I was like, guys, there's just way too much going on at the moment. And I know I love you and I love you and I love you, but you are all coming with me, hammering me with ideas. And I can't take it right now, because I have to do what I think is best for this vision. Otherwise, it's never succeed. So MWF pretty much was my way of pretty much saying F you to the USW name in a way, which is dumb because now all these years later, look, but it was my way of saying F you to the USW name, because the guy went around like telling everybody that he was the one who came up with USW, that he was the one that came up with the concept for United States Wrestling and this and that and blah, blah, blah. You would not believe, if I had $1 for every time someone calls my company USWA, I would, I'm like, that was Jerry Lawler's company. Like, I'm just USW, like, and people are like, yeah, like Brian Hardy runs the USWA. And I'm like, no, there's no association or alliance or anything on that. It's just USW, just United States Wrestling. We are legal. We are 110% by the books, legit. We are USW, United States Wrestling LLC. Like, okay, whatever. But yeah, over the years, everybody's like, yeah, the USWA, and I'm like, no, that was Lawler's promotion in Memphis. Yeah. And but yeah, we did that. We left the USW in the dust for a little bit, and even like I said, even small things like the logo that you just put up on the screen. Mm-hmm. I, once again, RIP, love you, Thunder Morgan. Thunder Morgan, a wrestler that used to be in WWF, designed that logo for me, and I paid him, a couple $100 to make that logo. And shit, man, now looking back, at the time when I paid that money, I went, oh, I don't know if that was worth it, and yada, 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 and this and that. Now, all these years later, I literally am like in love with that logo, where I'm literally like, that logo is plastered everywhere. Like, I was so thankful now, all these years later, that I paid that couple $100 to have that logo made, because I'm like, it's everywhere. Like, everybody knows it all the time and stuff. But MWF ended up being a thing. That was my way of kind of getting out from under the, the bullshit chattery of all the guys in the locker room and stuff like that. And it turned into pretty much me being like, okay, cool, we're going to do a new vision here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. There's certain guys that were on the USW show that I was like, I am learning from my mistakes, and I will never have them on an MWF show ever. And I stuck true to my word on that kind of stuff. But then there was so much that had went wrong in MWF, where there were times where guys were politicking for people to work for my company that I didn't want working for my company again. And
that's always a hard thing to deal with, isn't it? Like, because you don't want to tell that person that you like, and it is working for you, no, because it's going to ruin, or not ruin, but like it puts a indifference between your relationship with them, when it's like, no offense to that guy, but like, if I wanted that guy, I would have already had him, so to say. Like, and it puts you in a weird spot by having to say no, because it's like, I don't know, like I get that, like, yeah.
And I pride myself so much, like I said, on being like one of the easiest people that people can talk to. I find myself to be very like protective of not only my own feelings, but a lot of people's feelings at times. And I tell people, like, I like people, and there are a lot of people that I have had to openly look in the eye and say absolutely fucking not to. And I hated that I had to do that, but I had to be strong enough to go, there's no way, like, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. And they would get angry. And a lot of people left for greener pastures because of that kind of stuff, because it was like, they couldn't just handle no and keep working. It was like, well, Brian just doesn't see my vision, and he doesn't see my this and doesn't see my that. And it's like, yeah, but that's where you got it twisted. Like, I've been a promoter and a wrestler and everything in between, referee and production and yada, yada, yada. But like, at a certain point in time, you got to realize the guy with the checkbook is the one who's paying you, and you're going to have to do what that guy says. And, you know, that's the sucky part of being a talent, because as a talent, you have all these ideas running through your head and you really want to bring this and that to life. But I almost feel like, especially in previous years, and there may be a few, you know, rotten eggs that come out and say, oh no, he booked me like shit and he this and he that. But I really do feel like everybody, 90% of my locker room will tell you, Brian is the type of guy that will pull you into his office and allow you to sit down and talk to him about whatever you want to. You might not like the answer he's going to give you at the end, but he's always going to be very honest with you. And he's going to, you know, tell you, like, this is the way I see it, and this is the way that it can be. And I think the other thing about me that a lot of guys hate is that they hate that I won't give them what they want months in advance. Well, bro, when you go up to WWE TV, so much shit changes on the fly when you're there. You might end up being the dark match. You might end up being on TV. You might not be booked for anything. You might be booked for a backstage segment, but you won't know until you get there. And it's almost that like old school mentality of like walking into a locker room, and people used to say, like, Paul Heyman would wait till everybody showed up in the locker room together. John Rambo used to do the same shit. Wait till everybody's together in the locker room, and then pull out a napkin and a Sharpie and just start writing down, okay, who's in the corner in the back over there? Okay, yeah, you're going to wrestle so-and-so tonight. Okay, and it's that. I don't go to that extent.
The feel of the night, you know?
Yes, I don't go to that extent, but I do lock my shit in to the point where I want to make sure that all the talent is there. I'm not going to tell anybody what they're doing. I'm not telling anybody who's winning titles. I'm not telling anybody the finishes of the match, this and that. You want to know why? Because there are so many fucking prima donna, little tiny crybaby girls in the locker room that the thing is if I tell them 3 weeks in advance that they're not going over for the belt or they're not this and that, the shit talk starts, the crybaby shit starts. I'm going to wait till the last second, and then I'm going to no-show him, and I'm going to teach him a lesson and this and that and whatever. Nope. I'd rather get you to the building and pull you aside 5 minutes before you got to go out and say, hey, this is what you're doing tonight. This is the finish, yada, yada, yada. You got paid, right? So now you need to go out and do your job.
Yeah.
It's so old school. I wish I would have done all that with MWF. I didn't have the freaking nuts, man. I was so like a people person.
You said you were 19, right? You know, so it's like all those older vets and guys that have been around, they're using all the tricks of the trade, you know what I mean? To try to jerk your chain, manipulate you, and pull you in this direction, that direction. This guy, he don't know what's going on. He knows. I'll tell him what's best. You know, I'm sure there's a lot.
I've heard it all, bro. I've heard it all. I think that's in a way that's made me bitter over the years towards guys, because, like I said, there were guys that were friends of my father that
should have looked out for you.
That did look out for me, but then there's other guys that didn't look out for me, and I was like, the guys that should have looked out for me didn't, and that made me bitter and angry. Like, they were using me as a payday too. And then once again, at the end of the day, when I say stuff like that, I understand it's a business. I understand people are just trying to make money. They don't want to be your friend. They don't want to hang out with you. They don't want to this and that. But as a businessman, I'm trying to build relationships with people, at least enough to be trustworthy to say, like, oh, this and that. One thing that's kind of like sets people off that I do is there's not been a guy that has worked for me in the last 2 years that was a champion for another company that when they came into my locker room, the first thing I said is, are you a champion over at so-and-so's place? And they'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, you're not taking the pin tonight. And they would be like, what? Now people would be like, Brian, you're crazy. Like, run your company. Who gives a shit? I give a shit, because I wouldn't want anybody else doing that to my champions. champions. So why would I dare do that to somebody else's champion? I don't care if I like the promoter, if I don't like the promoter. I don't care what the situation is. If you're a champion somewhere else, you're not losing tonight. If you're in a tag team, the other guy's taking the pin. If you guys are both tag team champions at another company right now, then it's going to be a DQ finish tonight. There's so many ways to do good business with people that there are so many sick, slimy fucks in this business that they just don't give a shit. I had a guy that literally ran shows in West Virginia that buried the shit out of my tag team champions. He buried the shit out of my daughter, who was a ladies champion for my company at the time, and told me one thing and then completely did another. And now I've blocked him from Facebook and fucking unadded him and everything like that and stuff. And it's once again, I didn't have to rip him to shreds and say all this bad shit about him and stuff like that. I'm just not going to talk to you anymore or do business with you. And sometimes, the biggest response is no response. So the thing is, this is the first that I've talked about it, publicly or anything like that. But I was thinking, who the fuck are you, dude? I've been a wrestling promoter for close to 18 years now, and you've been a wrestling promoter for 7 years, and you literally don't know how to conduct business. So instead of doing business the right way, and you tell me, I'm going to bring your kid in, I'm going to pay her. She's normally a babyface. I'm going to make her a babyface, and we're going to go a time limit draw title for title, so that way she doesn't look weak as your ladies champion. Okay, fine. She gets there. She calls me. She's frantic. Dad, he's making me a heel. Dad, he's only paying me this much. And Dad, I got to lose to the girl. And I literally went, do the fucking job and get the fuck home. After that, you're not going back to work for him. Simple as that. And I don't normally say stuff like that. I never tell anybody where they can or can't work. But I've given you an inch and you took a mile. And at that point in time, I'm we're done here, and I say all the time, you guys are independent contractors. I don't have people signed $1 million contracts and all that kind of shit and stuff like that. But at least do me the benefit of not allowing someone to bury you, because in turn that buries my company, that buries my product. Then there's just so many promoters out there that don't care, and they're just who gives a shit? I'm here to get mine. And it's I could do that to you, but I won't, and I refuse to. And I try to keep that upstanding business reputation with people of trying to do good business over the years. Like I said, plenty of talent have left me over, money or lack thereof, or feeling like they haven't been respected or whatever. But like I said, for the 5 people that might say that, there's 25 that literally will say Brian is the most upscale, up-class promoter that I've ever worked for. He always feeds the boys. He puts, this guy that needs a hotel in here, and he's done this for this guy, and he's bonus to this guy. I mean, there's a million stories. So like I said, it's crazy, but it's all I've ever known. It's my family's business, my family's livelihood, and my legacy and everything like that. And I tell people all the time, if the worst thing that you can say about me is that I cuss like a sailor, then so be it. But I'm not this big, mean, bad guy that forces his kids to wrestle. My kids wrestle because they want to wrestle. Simple as that. If they don't want to do it and they said, Dad, I feel like becoming a pilot tomorrow, I'd be well, then we're going to take your ass to flight school right now. Let's figure out how to get you on that plane. And, I try to give the support that I felt like I never had as a kid, to my kids. And I hate that too, because that's a big, thing that I hear a lot of people talk about all the time. It's he forces his kids to wrestle, or he doesn't give this guy or that guy this spot because his kids have a spot on the show instead. Well, I know they're going to show up. And I know that when they're on the poster and they're advertised, it's the champion thing. Oh, he's his own champion. Why would he make himself his own champion? That doesn't allow guys to have a spot and an opportunity. Prove to me that you want to be my champion. Prove to me and build a relationship with me so much on trust that I can trust you to make every show, that you're not going to no show me, that you're not going to, try to hold me up for money or this or that or whatever. Prove to me that you want to be in that position, because I can name 3 guys in my locker room right now that I would trust to be in that position right now from a business standpoint, a financial standpoint, and I'll do that for you. But until then, I'm going to be the guy, because you want to know why? Because when my face is on the poster, I know I'm going to make the shows. I know I'm going to go to the children's hospital and sign autographs. I know that I'm going to make the autograph appearances and the media conferences and the this and the that and the whatever. I'm going to show up for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when you're betting on yourself and you're all in yourself, you're not going to let yourself down. And it's hard to sometimes invest in other people where you don't know if they are all in with you. You know what I mean? So like you said, prove it. Show you want to be here. Show you want to earn the championship. Show you want to, be involved with the company. And I'm sure it's like a family. It is a family. You know what I mean?
But it's a family business. I've got more people on the roster in my family and more people behind the scenes working in production and doing budgets and this and that and whatever, then I have more insiders than I have outsiders. So it's like when you come in, you got to kind of earn your spot. And like I even said that to one of the students the other day. I said, when you're here, you're going to feel like you're a part of a family because you are a part of a family. I was like, and I think that's what separates us from the rest of the organizations that are out there. And maybe that's why so many places hate us and fear us and stuff like that, is because at the end of the day, like we don't just
break that bond. You can't break that.
Yeah. And we don't treat it just like a business. Like it is a business. We understand we have to do business, but we treat it like a family. So like when you're in, it's like the mafia. When you're in, you're in, and when you're out, you're out. And there is no in between. And I think that a lot of the guys around, we've recently had to push a couple of guys out of the circle, and it sucks because like they were guys that I literally probably honestly would have taken a bullet for. And I look at that and I go, God, I hate that, because like I have nothing but good things to say about those guys. And I'm sure they are trashing me till the end of time, but they won't tell you about how I paid for hotel rooms and how I bonused them and how I this and that and whatever. They're only going to tell you about, well, he made us do a justice taping for free and we got stuck in 5 hours of traffic and we did this and that and we don't like his political stance and where he stands on this or that in real life, so we're going to blame it on the wrestling business. And it's like, nah, dude, that's horse shit. Like at the end of the day, like that's horse shit. But MWF, some of the greatest times in my life. I just wish that I would have known what I know today back then, because I don't feel like a lot of people would have taken as much advantage of me back then, in those types of scenarios. Signed a lot of paychecks. Ravens, Terry Funk.
That's what I was going to say. So, was there some notable names that passed through MWF?
Oh, yeah. The Headbangers, Jerry Lawler, Nunzio, Robbie E., Eric Young, like the list goes on and on. I was writing these people paychecks when I was 19 years old, and I'm like, to literally, write a paycheck for the franchise Shane Douglas or Justin Credible or this or that, or like the young little 7-year-old Brian Hardy that was sitting in his bedroom watching an ECW pay-per-view, or at 9 playing with his original San Francisco Toymakers figures, is shitting his pants at 19. Yeah. He's literally writing paychecks for the same guys that he was marking out for when he was 9 years old. So that's humbling. Like that is very, very, very humbling. And then I think, like I said, maybe that hurt me back then, because I felt like those guys were my friends, not those specific guys that I'm naming, just anybody in general, but those guys were my friends. And then I felt like, nah, dude, nobody's your friend. They're just trying to make a paycheck, Yeah,
they didn't have your best interest.
Yeah, they're just trying to get on to the next town. They don't care what the 3 letters read at any promotion that they're working at. They're just trying to get to the next town, where nowadays I would have no problem with bringing talent in, but I also feel like there's going to be a very strong understanding of A, B, and C, and it's all going to be in contracts and everything before you even get your foot in the door. Because the thing is that at any point in time, if I say, hey, we were supposed to split gimmicks during intermission or this or that or whatever, and you're like, no, I'm keeping all my gimmick money and shit. Well, fuck you, because on page 3 of this contract, it literally says that you owe me 50% of these gimmicks right now and this and that. Like, the amount of legality and by the book that my wife and I are now in comparison to how we were back then, everybody steamrolled us and train rolled us back then. And nowadays it would never work. Like, I always use the terminology that you can't work the worker. And that's where I feel like I'm at 35. Like, you can't work the worker, bro. Like, you might hate me. You might hate the fact that you couldn't get one over on me, but I will sit there with you and tell you till the end of time, this is what I'm able to do. And if you want to do that, cool. And if you don't want to do that, well, then we'll try to talk again, sometime down the line, and hopefully we can come to an agreement. But I have no problem. I love negotiating with people. Let's put it that way. Like back then I just would, oh, you want $2,500? Okay, I'll see you next week. Wait, that guy's never been anywhere. Oh, I don't care. That's what he said his price was. Like nowadays it's like, prove to me that you're worth X amount of dollars. Like, you want to be here, but you're not drawing any extra asses to the seats by you being on the card. So I don't have to book you, but if I'm going to book you, I'm going to pay you. It's the old adage in Nikolai Volkov used to always say that my wife and I were like a modern day Stu and Helen Hart. And I always laugh because I'd say, yeah, I watch documentaries where they would say, Stu would say, we got to pay the boys. And Helen would say, we can't afford to pay the boys. And he'd be like, well, we can't afford to not pay the boys, And that's very much so how I am. Even when we were doing, now Justice tapings are paid. But back a few months ago when Justice tapings weren't paid, we were still like putting together really nice catering for the guys backstage and shit like that and stuff. You just got to go that extra mile to show the people that you actually care. You care about them. You care about they're spending.
It's
their
little
gas.
things like that stick out and matter, especially to the boys, because they notice those things. Because I mean, I've even heard as far as like having water bottles in the locker room. You know what I mean? Like some places.
Matt Cardona literally said, like, please at least make sure there's water. Like when I say like our catering stuff that we have had over the months, nothing was ever the same. And there were times that our catering was out of this freaking world. I mean, one big hit obviously was like, there was times, I mean, now you have all your small stuff and we are like literally a mini WWE. So you have like your fruits and your veggies and your this and your that. And you have like 20 different types of drinks to choose from. And you got coffee and you got waters and sodas and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But then like on top of that, you have like your main stuff. There was, I think the biggest hit we've ever had is like Chick-fil-A trays and stuff like that.
Nice.
The shittiest stuff that we've ever had was one day we had like a hot dog day, like where once again, the old terminology of a hot dog and a handshake, and everybody, the people that hated me surefire wanted to rip on that, where they were like, oh, USW serving everybody hot dogs. And it's like, yeah, bro, but we weren't only serving hot dogs that day. We had lunch meats too. We had fruits, we had veggies, we had this, we had that. It wasn't like you weren't coming into just like hot dogs. I think one of the guys that worked for me that didn't like his payoff or whatever was like, I had a half-eaten hot dog at USW, and it's like, fuck you.
Yeah. There's always going to be somebody that's got something to say, you know what I mean? Or spin it in their own way of whatever, like you said, to make it seem like it was only hot dogs, What, so looking back, what do you think MWF's legacy is in Maryland, on the Maryland wrestling scene?
That's it's subjective. It's pretty much to anybody that was a fan. The choice is theirs. I hear both. A lot of times, I don't think it's fair for me to choose, because then it would be like bias or unbiased in that sense. But I think for the fans, like they can choose. There's a lot of people that say, dude, I literally loved MWF, like my childhood, which is a weird concept, like to think like there's guys that literally come up to me now.
Grew up through that. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched you and Robbie E main event at the Elks Lodge in Severn, and I was 6 years old, and I'm thinking, oh my God, but that makes sense because I was 19 at the time, and they were 6 sitting in the crowd and shit. And that makes you feel old. There's guys that, say that type of stuff. And I'm like, wow, crazy. Then there's other people that literally say like, man, that company deserved to go down. Like it went down in a blaze of glory. Like it started out hot and got real shitty towards the end. The one thing that I don't know, and once again, I love that stuff like this happens, because in a way, these podcasts are like their own version of like history and preserving history. For the people that didn't know, if they never were an MWF fan or didn't know about it, the very last MWF show that we ever had didn't end because business was bad. We had our biggest show in MWF history, even bigger than me and Lawler. Me and Lawler drew a humongous standing room only crowd. But at the time, indie shows in that area were drawing like maybe 200 people a show. So we had 200 plus in that building packed in like sardines that night. And it was at a fire also. Luckily, we didn't break fire code, or they just let whatever go. But we did the Elks Lodge the very last night. It was February the 27th, 2015. Once again, how I remember these dates, I don't know.
The Rain Man effect,
February 27th, 2015. And we drew 304 people in the Severn Elks Lodge. And that for that time was very great. And that was our biggest show that we had ever run in MWF history. And the only people that were on the card that were of any name value were my dad and Nikolai Volkov. And everybody else was just small local guys. And we had Nikolai on for a match, I think with like the Blue Basher. And we had me, my dad, and Thunder Morgan against Jimmy Aldean, Ducky Robertson, and Mike Height in a 6-man tag in the main event. And everybody talks about that show that night because I got out of the ring. Nikolai and I had gone to a children's hospital like the week previous to that. And there was a boy who he was going through a really hard time, and he was at like Mount Washington Children's Hospital. And till this day now, it's a huge success story because he's doing very well. And I think, the world of his story and stuff. But I got out of the ring, and it's unheard of. People don't ever talk about the Brian Hardy stuff like this. I mean, people close to me do. But I got out of the ring, and I turned around, and I took the title off of me, and I handed it to the kid. And he held it up in the air, and he's cheering and yelling and stuff like that. And I leaned over to his mother and father, and I said, he can keep that belt. And I turned around and walked away. And I walked into the backstage, and my wife was standing there with the headset on, and she went, what the fuck did you just do? And I said, we're going to have to order another title because I just and she's like, holy crap, Brian. And that night when I walked out, and once again, I didn't do it for anybody but that kid and his family. But everybody that night when I walked back out and I'm taking pictures and signing autographs, they were like, that was the nicest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, you just made that boy's life. And it feels good. It feels good to do stuff like that. I love doing stuff like that. I still do stuff like that all the time. I do it a lot with guitars. People always say, like, the Brian Hardy story, Elvis used to buy people cars. I buy people guitars. So like I will play a guitar on stage. I'll sign it and I'll give it to somebody. And like, I've given away so many guitars over the years, and people are like, holy crap, dude. I just love it. I love doing kind things for people. I love, people, just that happiness, like I said, that it brings people. I love that kind of feeling. You can't put a price on that type of stuff. And I feel like there needs to be a lot more of that in the world. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, MWF was special. It was a learning curve. MWF, yes, there was a lot of famous people that had come through the doors. I actually remember like the last couple MWF shows we were like officially, unofficially doing a partnership with Ring of Honor at the time. So Ring of Honor would always run the night before us, and we would literally like almost share talent. Like we would bring in the American Wolves, we would bring in this person, that person. But I knew that our locker room was something special when like the night, if they had to wrestle the night before, the night after, like I said, we would always do back to back. But I realized like our locker room was special when one night, and none of these guys were booked on my show. One night, Jay Lethal, Charlie Haas, and a couple other people were just hanging out backstage at the MWF show. And I literally walked backstage and like, what's up, Brian? Like, high-fiving me and shit. And I'm like, this is cool. Like, this is just like, and then the next night or the night before or whatever, I'd go to Ring of Honor and hang out with all, them and stuff. It was starting to build relationships and stuff. And, I don't really want to go into too much detail. People can buy my book, like I said, and read my book and understand what I'm talking about. And I will never drop a name, because as mad and angry as I am about things, I am also completely at times grateful. But on the very last night of MWF, highest grossing gate ever, highest attendance ever, highest everything. And at that point in time, I was like, cool, let's set up another show. And when we were about to set up another show, the promoter at the time, who was allowing us to use his promoter's license for years and years and years and years, ended up getting popped for insurance fraud. And a lot of stories came out about that and stuff. He was kind of like selling us fraudulent insurance policies and stuff like that. And one of the promoters had found out about it, and word got around, word travels fast. And I pretty much contacted the guy and told him, you have 10 minutes to send me every dollar that I have ever sent you ever for shows for the last X amount of years. Otherwise, like, it's going to be bad. And he did. He sent me every single dime that I had ever spent since 2010 to 2015. And then the weirder situation out of that was then he started booking me for shows. So it was one of those, like, that's how fickle and dirty the wrestling business can be, is not only did he give me a large lump sum of every dollar I ever spent back, but then he turned around and started booking me on all these shows. And I was like tagging with like Head Shrinker Samu and the franchise Shane Douglas and all these different people and shit. And I was just thinking, like, I just ballsed up on you and you literally gave me like everything under the sun. It was weird. It was a weird situation, and I felt really weird to be a part of it, but at the same time, it was one of those things, like, it was never an MWF doing on why we never ran again. I was in the crazy aspect of things. I was really shut down with the Maryland scene because of the covering my ass here. There was a member at the time of the Maryland State Athletic Commission that did not want me to be successful. He did not want me to run shows. He did not want me to do any of that kind of stuff. And he kept his thumb on me for a number of years to keep me from being able to host events because of other promoters in the area. And I felt like deep down, like that was the only reason that we didn't reach the level of success that we should have, was because there was a lot of people at the time trying to just keep their foot on my neck and keep me down and not have me do anything. And they all worked together to do that for a number of years. And it didn't, the moral of the story is all these years later, it didn't really work out. It did in a sense of like, I packed everything up that I owned years later now and moved to fucking Delaware. But at the same time, now that I live in Delaware, in less than a month's time of living here, we had our LLC, we had our promoter's license, we had everything under the sun that we needed to have to own and operate a professional wrestling company again here in Delaware. And I said, I don't know that I would have been afforded that same opportunity in Maryland because they did me dirty and tried to hold me down.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is like, obviously wrestling can be political and you face hate from other promoters and wrestlers. How have you handled that?
A lot of times it used to get to me. Like it used to eat me alive, dude. Like I was such a people person that like, if someone didn't want to, almost grade school, if someone didn't want to be my friend,
you're like, what the fuck? Yeah.
But I learned later in life that especially between the wrestling and the music industry, it was a double whammy. Not everybody's going to like you. You are your own flavor of ice cream. I tend to tell people sometimes that I'm mint chocolate chip. My haters will say mint chocolate shit, and like I tell people, I have been very open-eyed to the world around me, and the people that love me and care about me and want me to succeed, I give them all my energy. And the people that hate me and have nothing but negative things to say and treat me like shit and stuff like that, like I just write them off. I act like they don't exist in the world anymore. I don't give people the time of day. A lot of times people say, oh, he's too big for his britches and this and that. Or no, I don't, but I just don't have the energy to give to you.
It's not even worth it my time.
Yeah. Like if it's not, like I said, that whole, like when people say, oh, he ignores me, he deleted me from Facebook, he won't even talk to me. It's almost like it's a pot shot from them. It's a jab. But for me, it's almost like doing a service to them. Like, no, I'm just literally trying to not mess with your energy. I'm not trying to mess with my energy. And sometimes, like I said, some of the biggest responses are not having a response. Like you're not worth the response. You're not worth me like writing. You don't realize how many times over the years I've written out an entire paragraph on a status or a post or this or that, and then wrote it and felt better and hurried up and deleted it before I posted it. It was, from a standpoint of business, it was so successful to do that because I got out what I needed to get out.
You felt like, yeah.
But then the world didn't need to see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not everything is meant to be in the public eye. I always tell people I don't have shit to hide. Like I tell people all the time, like my life's an open book. Like you're probably not going to want to hear it, but like, like I'm going to tell you how it is regardless. But at the same time, a lot of times I look at things and go, geez, man, like there's a lot of promoters that I knew from the Maryland area. Some guys, and once again, I never judge anybody. I was never into the drug scene. I know that there were promoters that were heavily doing drugs and stuff like that. And I hear the boys talk all the time, and this guy does this and this guy does that. I've never touched a drug in my life. Put me on a lie detector test. It sucks. I tell people all the time, I've got 1 million friends. I mean, prime example. I got 1 million friends that smoke weed. I don't give a shit if they smoke weed. You know what I'm saying? But like me personally, it's not my thing.
That's your thing. Yeah.
It's not my thing. I never, like I like to drink beer. I'm a light beer drinker. I know my limit. I know when enough is enough. I kind of call myself a dork at times because like I'm the type of guy that could go to the bar, have 1 beer and be fine. And like, and I don't want to, have 10, 12, 14. I don't need to. I can pound them back like the best of them, but I'm the type of guy, Johnny Ramone from the Ramones used to say, I'm not a party guy. Like I'd go out and have 1 beer and that would be it for me.
Be cool. Yeah.
And that's me. And I'm like, I'm very like in tune with who I am. I'm very much so like I have friends that like to dabble in that stuff. I don't judge them. That's their thing. That's not my thing. I love them. If anything was to ever happen to them, I am running to them in a heartbeat to save them from whatever they need. But at the same time, when it comes to that, like, we're not going to sit around and hang around on a couch and do that shit together, because like, it's not my thing. Maybe having kids that young in my adult life was just something where I just never had time for any kind of stuff. I used to tell people all the time, like, my weakness when I was younger, like way younger, was women. But then the thing was, at the same time, it was like, but I was also raised by women, you know, like I was around my mom more than I was around my dad as a kid, but I also was like heavily raised by my grandmother, and a lot of my cousins that were around were girls, and this and that, whatever. So like, the level of respect that I have for women is like top notch, where I am the nerdy guy that when my wife used to work at a Food Lion, I would sit outside like a half hour early to make sure that every single girl that she worked with got safely to their vehicles and stuff like that and shit. So like, it sounds dumb. It sounds hokey. And I'm like, I don't know. Some people have this like image of me where I'm like this big Billy badass, and like I'm a little bit of everything, you know, like I'm everything tied into one, but I'm like, at the end of the day, it's really just like being a good guy. The point that I was trying to make, I rambled, but the point I was trying to make was like, I know that there were wrestlers that literally you know, like, they were into drugs. You know, I had to play babysitter for numerous wrestlers. They were into, you know, promoters were into that type of shit. There were promoters that were womanizers. There were promoters that were this, that were that. Like I said, if the worst thing that people can say about me, like I said, is that I like to cuss a lot, or that I was occasionally the guy that was giving people $10 payoffs here or there or whatever, I always tell people, like, you literally were rather that good that you got paid so much money by me because I felt like you were worth it, or you got paid that little of money from me because your friends begged for you to be on my show and I didn't even want to book you on my show in the first place. So you should have taken that fucking $10 as the biggest like appreciation of all time, because like, I probably, chances are, didn't even really want you there. So it was kind of like one of those, this is a sympathy pay for your, you know, buddy telling me to book you on the show. So I hope to God you know how to merchandise properly. I don't regret any of my time in Maryland. I love Maryland with all my heart. I even have a MWF tattoo on my arm.
Nice.
But I think that it really took all of those years of wrong and being wronged by the Maryland promoters and all that other kind of shit and stuff. And it's not crying hour, you know, it's not like feel sorry for me, have sympathy for me. I don't give a shit, you know. At the end of the day, I survived stuff that I probably should have never survived, because there was a lot of guys that were jealous of me. There was a lot of guys that wanted me dead. There was a lot of guys that thought this young little prick is coming into our area and trying to take over our territory, so to say, stuff like that. And it's like, I survived. I mean, I still give props to the biggest running promotion in Maryland. We all know their name. I don't need to say their 3 letters, but they did good for themselves. The promoter and I don't get along. There's numerous reasons why we don't get along. And everybody, you know, my name has come out of his mouth more times than it probably ever should have. On like, they did a podcast years ago or whatever, where he would always try to like bait people to talk shit on me, you know, like where it'd be like one of those, what do you think of Brian Hardy, you know, type things. And like, they'd be like, I love Brian. Like, Brian's a good guy, you know. And when they didn't give him the answer that he wanted, he was probably thinking, what the fuck? Why did I ask that?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like if you would have just kept your mouth shut, not asked anything, then you would have been in the clear. But because you asked about me and they told you what they really thought of me as a person, and it was very good, then it wasn't good enough for your podcast. So I always found that to be funny. I think that guy, like, once again, like, I read stories. There's a lot of Maryland wrestling history books. If any of these fans watching the show ever get to go check them out, there's like a book written by Ricky Blues, William Blake. It's called To Kill the Town. It is an amazing book about Maryland wrestling history. They dropped my name in it a few times and stuff like that. And that was right when I was breaking into the wrestling business. There's another book called like Battleground Baltimore. It has to do with like all the shows that ever took place at the Baltimore Arena, from like the inception of the Baltimore Arena all the way to like I'd say probably about 2014, 2015, something like that. So that's another good book to check out. But there was I think in the Battleground Baltimore book, they have like little excerpts and stories and stuff like that. And the one thing I always found funny was the promoter for the largest company in the state of Maryland. There's a story in that book where he thought he was like cool as shit. Like he was a young kid, you know, kids will be kids. But he thought he was cool as shit because my mom and my dad were sitting at the Baltimore arena. And this goes, once again, the hatred for people, I guess, does run 2 generations deep where it doesn't even have anything to do with me, you know. But,
you're getting the reciprocal.
yeah, and he in this part of this book, it talks about how my dad and my mom are sitting front row at the NWA show in Baltimore, and they would always go to see WWF and NWA. My mom's best friend, her husband was like one of the commissioners back then in the days of Lou Levy. God rest his soul. I freaking love and miss Lou so much. I heard Bob talking about him on your show, you know, and I was like, God, it started to tear me up because I'm like, he gave me my first pro wrestling license too, and I'm like, I freaking miss him. I love him.
I miss him too. He's a good guy.
Amazing to me. I remember I would always go get him hot water and bring it to him, and he'd make his own little like cup of tea and stuff like that. I miss him. But like back in those days, my parents were very close with the commissioners. Everybody was cool. So I couldn't understand all these years later why the one commissioner that worked for them for so many years hated me and like did wrong by me, because all these other commissioners, if my parents would have still been friends with those people and in the current, like they would have never treated me the way that I was treated for years by the commission. And it was crazy. So basically this promoter goes up and says to my dad, "Hey, Barry Hardy, how about an autograph?" And my dad goes, "Sure, kid." Now my dad's got his decked out mullet and he's wearing a wrestler's tank top with Zuba pants and like Nikes on or whatever and this and that. And all of a sudden he goes, "You know, how about an autograph, Barry Hardy?" And my dad says, "Okay, kid." And like literally gets ready to act like he's about to sign something for the kid. And the kid turns around and signs his name on a piece of paper and hands it to my dad, being a smartass. And at that point in time, you know, then all of his buddies are heckling. But the whole rib was that night, his older brother and his brother's friends said that they would pay for the young kid's ticket at the time if he went up and did that to Barry Hardy. So that kind of all those years ago, back in the late 80s, shows you how much of a fucking prick this guy was. And he literally treated my dad, you know, like shit. And then all those years later, I don't know, like if him and my dad had bad energy or whatever. I mean, they must not have, because he inducted my dad into like his Hall of Fame or whatever, some shit like that. You know? But at the same time, like it's funny because I'm like, maybe all that energy floated over to me. But I was like, it's one of those things too, where like I said, I don't give that guy too much energy, but I'm giving you a lot more insight. I'm hoping this gets views.
What do you think the biggest misconception about Brian Hardy is?
God, once again, I don't know if that's fair enough for me to say. I know we've talked a lot about it, and I think that the meat of it will come through. But like, I don't know. I think that, like I said, you know, kind of like we talked beforehand. Like, I feel like I know you without knowing you. You know what I mean? Because we know so many mutual people. That's the thing. And it's all, like I said, everything is kind of hearsay. So it's almost like one of those, if somebody has a good story about me, that it's great and grand. If somebody has a bad story about me, then that is bad. And they, you know, for the rest of the time.
And the thing I think about that is like anything that I've seen, like interviews or, you know, things that are out there, it's always been like, well, I take it at face value. You know what I mean? And like I said about the documentary, I think that you came over pretty well in that, and you handled it well. And it's like people are always like quick to say, "Oh, Brian's this or Brian's that, it's Brian's this." It's like anything that I've seen, it's actually been the opposite. So it's like I think that's sort of the misconception I feel like that people have about you. They think that like they know you, or they think that you're this guy or that type or whatever. But it's really just like, hey man, if you actually know him, he's like pretty seems like a pretty genuine, honest, upfront dude who shoots it straight. And it's like if the people that don't like him are the ones that seem like they can't handle that kind of shit.
Yes, and there's a lot of hurt. Like I tell people, like I'm man enough to admit it. You know, there's a lot of hurt, and I used to tell people all the time, I hold grudges. Like I'm not like one of those types of guys. Like you can only piss in someone's mouth so many times before they're literally like, I'm done. Like I don't like the taste of this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I feel on the spectrum of a lot of things. There's actually like 2 different stories and not going crazy into it, but like there's a story of a guy who used to rent me rings all the time. And he was told by a specific promoter, don't rent this guy a ring. How much is this guy paying you? If he's willing to pay you X, I'll pay you double to not take the ring. And he did, and he left me high and dry. And I wrestled this guy numerous times, had great matches with the guy. We were always safe in the ring with each other. We always, this and that and whatever. And he took the money. And I was told by a specific student of his, he took the money, and he still, till this day, laughs and jokes around with people about it. And it's a punchline like, yeah, I fucked Brian Hardy over, like, yada, yada, yada. And it was so sad because there was one night where I was in a locker room with him, and I literally said at the time, now my son Owen is old enough that, like, I think my son would probably throw some fisticuffs too. But like back in the day, my son was a little tiny boy at the time. And I literally told them, like, if that guy walks in this locker room right now and tries to act like my buddy, I'm going to beat the shit out of him in front of everybody right here in this locker room. And it's just because it was hurt. Like, I felt like we had built such a bond and a relationship and such trust that I felt like when he did me dirty like that.
How could you do that? Yeah.
He solidified who he was loyal to. And at that point in time, I literally said, okay, I'm wiping my hands clean of you. I'll never speak to you again. And it's almost like one of those things. He could come to me tomorrow with like all the money in the world and drop it at my feet and say, I'm so sorry. Like, I just want you to be my friend again. Let's try to mend fences and make things like it's so bad to the point where with that specific gentleman, there are promoters that I will literally say, if that guy is on your show, I'm not coming. Like, I'll do another show if you ever run a show and he's not on it. But like, I know that he's tight with another guy that I don't like. So now, like, I specifically won't go and do a show, costing myself money, which is really dumb, but I specifically won't go do a show.
It's better to not be in the situation than to subject yourself to that environment, I guess.
Just to keep my peace. There was another guy the other night, and it felt really bad because we were out in public. I won't say where, I won't get too much into detail because then the guy will know exactly who I'm talking about. But we saw each other in public, and my wife, I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited. And I could tell I was getting red in the face and I was getting very angry and stuff. And my wife said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "You see that guy over there?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "He decided that he wanted to go online and call me a racist and say that I was this and I was that and I was yada, yada, yada." And I said, and he flooded the gates at the time. And a lot of guys, I started finding out like who was my friends and who weren't my friends, because a lot of guys were like, "Yeah, dude, he's a piece of shit. He's a this, he's a that, he's a blah, 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 blah." And they were feeding into all of the BS that this guy was saying. And this happened in 2016. And just the other night, swear to God, hand to God, like 3 nights ago, I ran into him and he came up to me and he stuck his hand out and he was like, "Hey brother, how are you doing, man? I it's so good to see you. How's life going?" And at that point in time, you got to kind of stop and you got to realize two things. Number one, did that guy grow up? Like, everybody grows, growth is for everyone. Did that guy grow up? Or is that guy still such a piece of shit, but he's just trying to like,
is he just trying to like, kiss your
the
ass
wrestling
because
business, he was motherfucking me. You know what I'm saying? So like in the wrestling business, was he in the situation where now he's just looking for bookings and he realizes he inserted foot in mouth, and now all these years later he's trying to get booked by me? Bro, I wouldn't do business, as I say in the wrestling business. If you were a girl and you were the hottest girl in the world, I would not fuck you with somebody else. Because that's the thing. At that point in time, like, you're trash to me, bro.
Yeah, you're done. Yeah.
You have literally buried yourself. You have created your own grave. And at that point in time, I literally am sitting there going like, nope, like, I don't care. Once again, if you said, "Hey man, I got $10,000. I'm a huge mark. I want you to book me on your show. I'll pay you 10 grand. At that point in time, no, like, the 10 grand ain't even worth it. Everybody else around me would be like, "Let him pay you 10 grand to put him on the show." Not me. Like, it's principle at that point.
It's the
like,
point.
You did me dirty. It's been bad, and let's just go our own separate ways. I shook his hand. I was polite, but it was so funny because we walked out of the parking lot and my wife said, "Wow, you just literally said that guy said all this horrible stuff about you." She said, "And you could have knocked him out." She said, "And instead you literally just said, 'I'm good, man.' You were short. You weren't fake. 'I'm good, man. How are you?' And then left and went on about your life." And she's like, "How does that make you feel as a person?" And 4 letters, hurt. Some people would say, "Brian, that's strength. That's being strong. That's this and that." And it still hurt, man. Like I'm a human being with feelings too. Like
you don't forget, but also I think like you shaking his hand and still saying something to him, it kind of still it takes that burden off of you, and it places it on him, because then he still knows what went down, and and he knows that it'll never be that again. So it's like at the end of the day, you are the one that took the higher road, and obviously he's going to reap what he sows out of that situation, because it's unfortunate when those kinds of things happen.
Yeah, it was definitely a weight lifted in a sense on my end, but like I tell people all the time, I'm like, God, that is tough. That there's, like I said, and once again, if I didn't run into those guys, I would never think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like really don't harbor that much anger and negative energy. It's just when I'm put in a spot to have to face that, instantly it's like all the memories come rushing back. What is the reason that I don't talk to that specific person? And it's like, oh, but like I said, I'm sure there's enough people that you put them all into a room. Brian Hardy doesn't talk to me because of blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, Brian Hardy doesn't talk to me because of blah, blah, blah. Well, at the end of the day, bro, once again, maybe self-evaluation is a huge thing. Like I can go to bed with a clear conscience every night saying, this is why I talk to people and spoil them rotten every day, or this is why I won't even associate with anybody. But could they do the same and have a clear conscience going, yeah, I fucked Brian Hardy over out of a ring rental, and he won't talk to me all these years later. And I don't understand. Like, I'm one of the greatest wrestlers on the circuit, but he just won't book me. Well, there's a reason, dude. Like, there's a reason.
Yeah. Let's switch up. I have a few more things for you before we let you go. I know we're going a little long, but how did you feel when your kids decided to step into the business?
Scared. I love, number one, they are all so good. I know. And once again, that's not being a parent. Like I know as a parent, like you're supposed to be supportive of your children and stuff like that and stuff. Like I just, once again, giving it straight, if they sucked, I would tell them, like, you guys suck, like get better, figure out how to get better. Like this. They were molded and crafted and shaped into the best that they possibly could be. And they just had every avenue that I did not have when I was younger. They had everything at their feet. They have all these different people that they could call, all these different places that they could go to. I mean, I don't know any other kids that are like, between the ages of 13 and 17 at the time that were taking legitimate bookings, and it's like, I think with maybe the exception of Kerry Morton was a little kid running around the locker rooms all the time when I was younger. And I would laugh. I'd be like, that's Ricky Morton's kid. He's going to be a star. God, I'm so proud. Like they are so good. And like, I try not to tell them that because I don't want their head to, explode.
Blow their ego up.
So good. All in their own ways. Like one kid, I mean, I got a bazillion kids, but one kid might have the best promo. Another kid might have the best thing in ring. Another kid might have the best facial expressions. Another kid
That's cool.
Like there are certain things that I just pull out, that I pick out and I go, wow, so good. And they might, they might have a lousy drop kick, but if they have a lousy drop kick, then they got a hell of a promo, so to speak, or, this or that. So there's always going to be good and bad. There's always room for improvement and things to work on. But man, I tell you, I was blown. I never expected in a million years that they all were going to get into the business. I thought Owen was going to get into the business and that the rest of them were just going to do whatever the hell they wanted to do in their life. Owen was born and bred for pro wrestling. I honestly, once again, sounds like, damn, well, you're his father. I just think Owen is, I hear it a million times a day from people, but Owen is so freaking good that I feel like he's just got star written all over him. And everybody says, Owen at this age reminds us of you at 19, and this and that and whatever. And I'm like, yeah,
how old is he now?
He's 17.
He's 17?
Yeah, this upcoming October. He's been in a ring, like actually, like legitimately.
I feel like he's been wrestling for a minute.
It's been about close to 2 years, like professionally, but like even at 13, he was coming in the ring and like doing spots with me at 13 where like we'd pop the crowd, like the heel would like get him up and do like something crazy to him and like go to throw a line. He'd duck and hit him with a Hurricane Rana or something. And different tilt-a-whirls, all that kind of shit. But like, he's just so freaking good. He eats, sleeps, lives, breathes everything professional wrestling. And like his siblings do too. And God, they all are amazing. And they all have their own little, vices on certain things in the business and stuff. But I'm like, I knew since birth that that's what he was born to do. The rest of them, I did not know that, and they all got into it, and they all started doing very well. And at that point in time, I literally went, yeah, I think all of you are going to be successful in your own ways. Like I said, and if any of them are lacking anything, they all pick each other up. It's a huge family unit. It's not bullshit.
That's awesome.
We face a lot of, struggles at times, like any family does. But one thing that we all, get together and say is like, it's so scary. Cause like the Von Erich movie that just came out last year or whatever, it was tough to watch. Cause I swear that's how our family interacts all the time. Like we're the family dinner people. We're the, out in the yard playing football with each other. We're out and doing everything together. Everything is together. And it's a very hard time in our life right now because our two oldest just went off to college. And one's in Virginia and one's in Berkeley in California. And it feels like a huge hole in the family right now. And it feels like, we all can't wait for them to like come back and stuff like that. And like I said, brothers and sisters and everything, they all have their own fights, and mom and dad have their arguments with the kids at times and stuff like that. But overall, like family first, for everything. So we all pull together in the hardest of times. It's like, and I think the thing that's intimidating to the outside wrestling world too, like we touched on earlier, is that we can all fuck with each other. But if any of you fuck with us, then you're in trouble because we are like an army and fuck you up. Yep. And and there was one of my oldest last night was involved in a severe car accident with my granddaughter, and they're okay. But it was rough. And it was like one of those situations where there was a couple people online writing stupid shit pertaining to my kid. And I was thinking he could have died in that fucking car accident last night. And there's so much outpouring of love on the internet that people were so amazing, but there were a couple bad eggs that are literally like writing stupid shit. And I'm thinking, you probably wanted him to die, and I'm like, and that's a terrible thing. Nobody should ever have to think something like that or whatever. But I'm like, that's the fucked up world, unfortunately, that we live in. It's like 35, 40, 50, 60 people, 100 people will be like, praying for you, prayers, hope to God for the best.
There's always going to be the one or few idiots that have something stupid to say.
Yeah. Like, you should have gone a little faster, should have wrecked it a little harder, should have this, should have that. It's like, good God, man.
Yeah. Do you so how do you approach your kids? Do you approach them more as dad or the veteran, giving them advice as far as when it comes to wrestling?
It's hard because you got to learn how to separate the two. And I wish, I'm still working on that to this day with my father. I wish that we could have a wrestler relationship, and I wish that we could have a dad and son relationship. My dad is genuinely a good-hearted soul, and he means well in a lot of the stuff that we have conversations about. We have a lot of real life conversations now, which we never did, years before. We would only ever talk about wrestling. Now we find ourselves talking about a lot of other shit because people his age are, sadly, it sucks to talk about, but people are passing away, and it's just one of those things where we kind of like talk and stuff like
mortality sets in a little bit.
Yeah. And it sucks because there's talks that we have about wrestling where he literally is like ripping my ass on things. And he's like, this and that. And I'm just like, God, like, just be my dad. Like, just be my friend. Like, just talk to me about real life. Like, don't talk to me about the business. Cause when we start talking about the business, we don't see eye to eye on things. And then we start mean and rude to each other and stuff. And I'm like, I don't like that. And with my kids, I kind of try to go off of that basis of like, if I'm in dad mode, I'm in dad mode. And bro, we're going to make some sandwiches and we're going to have some Doritos and we're going to watch a movie and we're going to this and we're going to that and whatever. Go to the beach, hang out, whatever. But if I'm in promoter mode and rest mode, this is, and I'm sure my dad has that same mentality. This is my business and this is my life. Yeah. And if you're going to come in and do it, you're going to do it the right way. And I don't care if the 5 guys down the street that all own their own little wrestling schools that have never been on WWE, that have never had to work with any major names, think they know that they're doing it the right way. And to their credit, they may know a little bit. They may know a tiny bit of what they think they need to know to do something. But at the same time, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it the right way. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it the serious way. I swear, man, if you ever had my wife on this podcast to talk about like the wrestling business from the promoter and the wife standpoint, she rips them a new ass before they walk out the door. She says, you better go there. I'm going to know what promoter you're working for. I'm going to know if you set up and tore down their ring. I'm going to know if you helped with the chairs. I'm going to know that she's like just ripping them to shreds because she knows right from wrong of the business. She's like, and you do not ever want to leave a stain on the family name to show up somewhere and be like, those kids didn't work their way into the business. They got everything handed to them because of their mom and their dad and this and that and who their grandfather is and blah, and whatever else. And we wanted to break all of those stigmas right there. And we wanted to literally go earn your way in, earn your keep, go there, set up and tear down rings, make friends, train with people, do the seminars, do this and that. Look, man, and I'm not saying once again, Owen loves, I won't say the wrestler's name, but like, actually, fuck it, I will say the wrestler's name. Ryan McBride. Owen loves Ryan McBride. He idolizes Ryan McBride. He looks at Ryan, much like everybody else does in the state of Maryland, like one of the focal points of pro wrestling. If you ask Owen in an interview who his two idols are, he will tell you, like from just a full-blown wrestling standpoint, he'll tell you that he's a fan of Will Ospreay, and he'll tell you that he's a fan of this person, that person, whatever. But he will say, my two idols are Ryan McBride and my father. And he always says, we need to see a real-life Ryan McBride, Brian Hardy match, and we need to get it because we only ever got Ryan McBride, the star, versus Brian Hardy, the squash guy. We never got Brian Hardy in his prime against Ryan McBride. And I don't really know. Like I said, I try not to get political about it, but like I don't ever really know if we never got that because I don't know if Ryan ever thought that Ryan helped train me in the beginning, like of my career and stuff like that. I don't know if we ever got to that same level because I don't know if Ryan ever put me on that same level as him, but I really feel like Ryan McBride and Brian Hardy could have had like some almost Ryan McBride, Adam Cole style matches.
Let's put it out there in the Bingohall right now. Ryan McBride versus Brian Hardy.
Yeah, if given the chance.
He just started wrestling again, so
yeah. But and so the thing is, what I'm getting to is, if Owen said to me, "There is a seminar next week with Ryan McBride, and I want to go do it," and this and that, Ryan had never, and I mean this with all respect. I don't mean this with disrespect. I love Ryan McBride, really, really do. Ryan had never reached that, I guess, that level of like upper echelon of the business, the WWEs, the this, the that, blah, blah. Still a great talent, but Ryan never reached that level in that sense, even on the smaller level, even on the enhancement talent level or yada, 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 or this, that, fine, cool, whatever. And if he ever decides to go out, awesome. But Ryan's a hell of a talent. So if Owen said, Dad, I want to go to a Ryan McBride seminar, I'd say, go right now. Like, go. Yeah. You're going to gain a shitload of knowledge from Ryan. He is so knowledgeable. He is so good in ring. He is so this. He is so that. I love Ryan. Boom. Owen, you got my blessing. Go. I just did that recently with Matt Taven with him, and I went, go to Matt Taven. And then Matt Taven's like, your dad's Brian Hardy? Like, oh my God, dude, this is awesome. I love you, Dad. And then he took way good care of Owen and this and that and whatever. But and really had a good night and spent the whole night hanging out with Matt Taven. But the thing is I would tell Owen in a heartbeat to go to a Ryan McBride. I don't know that I would tell Owen to go to a Johnny No Dick at, such and such in New Jersey or this or that or whatever, because I don't know them. But I know that Ryan is fundamentally sound and skilled and would teach Owen a thing or two because he taught me a thing or two. But then at the same time, I am very much so of the go learn from the Ricky Mortons, go learn from the Carlitos, go learn from the this, the that, all the big name guys, because I'm like, so I would put me on that same level and scale of a Ryan McBride with just a little bit of extra pop rocks on top of it because I've had the time with, WWE and blah, 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 and got to see how things operated there. Ryan McBride and I were both on like the Ring of Honor camps together and stuff like that. Just like I said, like in my eyes, Ryan could have taken it so much further. It's another one of those examples of Ryan chose his own path. He chose his own career. He knew what he wanted. He knew what he was comfortable with. this and that, and whatever. I think for what he did it to a perfect level of expertise. But at the same time, like if he ever decided to go bigger, he probably could go bigger because he's got the talent and, the ability to. But at the end of the day, it's a personal choice. I'm just saying, when I tell my kids who to learn from and stuff like that, it really all depends on whether or not they are really, like if the person has the sound fundamentals and the skills, or if the person is just some guy who started in the business 2 weeks ago and is like, hey, or exact opposite. If the person is like 16 years in the business and has never done shit, never wrestled anybody important,
wrestles a few matches a year, but they're a 16-year veteran.
Yes, and I hate that. I despise that. Like there's a couple of guys that come to mind, and I will not mention their name, but like there's a couple of guys that come to mind, and they literally walk by me and think that they're on the same level, and I'm going, bro, like that is equally as bad as in comparison to the music business. And once again, I never knock anybody, but like that is equally as bad as the guy who is playing down at the corner bar, doing a karaoke night or open mic night or something, and thinking that he's on the same level as Brian Hardy, who has played the Whiskey A Go-Go on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood. Like, we're two different people, bro. Like, it's once again, it's observing and knowing where you are. And there's a lot of guys that I look at that go, I'm not on their level. And then there's a lot of other guys that I look at and I go, I would never, I would never even step in a ring with them because I don't think that they're safe enough to take care of me. And I think that we would get lost and it would turn into a shitty match and it would be on them. And I don't want to blame them for having a shitty match.
Last thing I'm going to leave you with, Brian, is what's the most important lesson you've passed down from your father?
Oh, well, my dad's most
actually famous. I got two more. I lied. I got two more.
We're good. Yeah, we're good. We're chilling, dude. My most favorite line ever in the business, and my dad learned this from Charlie Fulton and Larry Sharp at the Monster Factory. My dad was partners with the both of them. For every wrestler out there, you keep your eyes, boom. You keep your eyes and your ears open and your mouth shut. And you literally learn and listen. Another really good one, that's my dad's line. That my dad, I've heard it so many times, from a young age till now. Keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. Keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. Sorry, Dad, I didn't necessarily follow that, all the time. It's a good lesson. I was good about it most of the time. But in that same context, Carlito. I love Carlito, and I learned a lot from Carlito over the years, hanging around him and stuff like that. He literally said Carlos Colon, his father, always told him, never miss an opportunity to shut the fuck up. The best advice. You would not believe how many guys that I run into on the daily where I literally try to correct them and say something and they turn and look at me and they go, yeah, but, well, that but just fucked you. Like it just literally with no unroyally, with no lubrication, no nothing. Like it just fucked you. And you didn't realize by saying, yeah, but that was an opportunity that you could have zipped those lips and just said, you know what? You're right. And I should learn from that. What you choose to do with it once you walk away is completely up to you. You can rather keep it there in your brain and learn a lesson from it and bam, or you can literally let it slide right out your brain, out your ears, and forget it ever existed. But as long as you're showing that respect right then and there when someone tries to correct you on something, you can literally, like I said, you decide what you want to use it with. I hear so many students, so many people say, yeah, but, and then they try to go into an excuse. No. Eyes and ears open, mouth shut, never miss an opportunity to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's because people nowadays, they don't know how to have a conversation or listen. They just wait for someone to get done, and then it's whatever I had to say because they're not really listening. Like you said, you got to sometimes shut the fuck up and just listen. And
accountability is the biggest word that I can use all the time. Like you're being held accountable for your actions. You are literally... You have the ability to choose right from wrong, and you're choosing wrong. That's on you.
Yeah. I think it's also the age we're in now. Everything's now. I got to spit it out. I got to get it now. It's like, you just slow down, listen.
Yep.
But, last thing I have for you, Brian, this time, for short, is looking ahead. What do you hope the Hardy name represents for future generations in wrestling?
That's tough because
now there's three generations out there now. So
I will be the first to admit to people, we are not perfect. We are human. We put pant legs on one leg at a time. I mean, unless some people are crazy and pull both up and fall over on the edge of the bed or whatever. We put our pant legs on one leg at a time. We bleed, human, just like everybody else. Red, you cut me open, there's going to be red bleeding out. We are normal people. We face real life struggles. We have had our fair share of ups and downs. I have been rich in my life. Honestly, yes, I have. I'm not afraid to admit it. I have been rich. I have also been very poor in my life at times. There have been times where I have barely been able to hold on, how I'm wondering where my next meal is coming from, how my next bill is being paid, all that kind of stuff. I have faced both in my life multiple times at different times. This whole life is peaks and valleys. I would like to think that the Hardy name, when people think of the Hardys, they are going to think of a family unit. They are going to think of people that could have thrown in the towel a very, very, very long time ago and never gave up on each other, no matter what the situation was. Off air, I had said something to you earlier, and my life's an open book, as I said. There was infidelity years ago with me and my wife, and it's public. It's in my book and everything like that. She could have chose to not forgive me if she wanted to. It could have destroyed our family. We could have been the couple that literally just went on about our lives. The mother and the father split. The kids were a broken home. The this, the that, the blah, blah, blah. I was man enough to admit my flaws. I was man enough to admit my fuck ups. You learn, you grow. And at this point in time, I would honestly say my wife is a saint. And she has dealt with so much. She is literally the glue of the family. She keeps the kids together. She keeps the husband together. She keeps things going. Family values are a very, very, very big thing. We all fuck up. We all make mistakes. We're not perfect. One of my kids, says all the time, like, I was not your idea of an average kid. I was crazy, and I was this, and I was that, and I was transgender, and I was blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, at the end of the day, like, you're a human being. Like, you deserve love just like everybody else around you. So, like, at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is, like, realize that we're human. Realize that we fuck up. We make mistakes. We fix it. We're a family. We find out how to bring family values together. But most importantly, like I said, we can all pick on each other. We can all treat each other like crap at times and knock each other down, dust each other off. But at the end of the day, I hope to God that no outsider ever does, because we're all coming at you at the same time.
Gang mentality. Well, Brian, I appreciate you for stopping by the Bingohall. It's been great. Let the people know where they can find you, what you have coming up. I know you have an event coming up here in September. Let me go ahead and pull that up.
Yeah, man. Double days. So we have Saturday, September the 20th and Sunday, September the 21st. We have been teaming up with a company called the Brimming Horn Meadery. They are fantastic. They have 2 locations. On the Saturday show, we are in Milton, Delaware from 4 to 8 p.m. On the Sunday show, we are in Seaford from 2 to 6 p.m. that day. As you can see, there's multiple different wrestlers on the card. I mean, legendary people like Playboy Bobby Starr, King Kalua, the Gigolo Josh Vallon, who's a newcomer, BT Windsor, all that kind of stuff. The list goes on and on and on. We have the reinforcer Andrew Anderson with Miss Karen. You may know him from the movie The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke. And like I said, our ticket prices are usually always the same. $25 for ringside, $20 general seating, $15 bring your own chair. And that's the prices for both the days. So that doesn't change. Card subject to change, no refunds, no exchanges. It is live pro wrestling fun for the entire family. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/United States Wrestling or Instagram at the official USW. If you're into the music thing, like I said, you can always find me musically at facebook.com/Brian Hardy Music. And you never know where I'll pop up. That's the thing. Wrestling, music, all that kind of stuff. I'm constantly around doing stuff, but I've gotten picky and choosy in my older years. I know this upcoming weekend, actually, I don't know when this is going to make air, but on August the 30th, I'm going to be wrestling my oldest kid, Huck Sawyer. I'm going to be wrestling him at the Boys and Girls Club in Seaford, Delaware for Delmarva Wrestling Digest. So it's going to be a fun weekend coming up.
That's your oldest son or oldest?
So we have four biological children and 3 adopted children, and he is our oldest adopted.
Nice. Also, I meant to bring it up earlier, but I do have a little picture. Well, let's go ahead and plug it. The action figures that you have coming up as well, right?
Oh my gosh, dude. What you want to talk about? The appreciation that I have for learning about how long the process is to take on these types of things.
That's what Bob was saying.
It is. I've learned how to have patience. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's a process. And once again, it's not like one specific person that I've gone through. I did things, once again, the DIY punk rock style way of how can I make everything as professional as possible without going through one company that is going to charge me $1 bazillion. Now, I'm not going to lie. This was a very expensive venture. And I mean, it is thousands and thousands of dollars. But the thing was, I had a guy who crafted the figures. And then I literally had a person who did the paint jobs on the figures. Then I had another person who literally did the packaging on the figures and all that kind of stuff. So we are about just 2 weeks shy of releasing a lot of those figures to the public.
Okay.
It has been a process that started back in 2023. So it's weird. Like if you look at the figures, I do believe that at the bottom of the I think it's the right foot on each figure says USW 2023 on it, which is kind of crazy. So now here we are in the summer of 2025, and we are about to release these figures. The average rate of each figure is about $50, just because it's rough. They're limited to 50 figures a piece. So there's 50 Bob Stars, 50 Danny Mays, 50 Brian Hardys, 50 Stunning Adam Armstrongs. But they are literally cool. Each of the figures, there's 10 chase figures. So if there's 40 regulars, there are 10 chase figures out there in the wild, basically, that will be released. Price point, like I said, $50 for each figure. You can get the whole set for $200. If you did the pre-orders a couple months back, you could have got the figures for $175 at the time. So you could have got all four for $175. But we will be doing Series 2 soon. And in Series 2, we will have Huck Sawyer and Owen Maverick and stuff like that. So that'll be really cool. We have no plans on, stopping or quitting with that. Also, since you just brought up the figure line and we never talked about it real fast, the last thing that we'll leave you on, because we're hitting almost the 3-hour mark on this, which is rad,
Awesome.
is this upcoming week, actually, we are finalizing all of the plans and details on the USW Academy, which has moved from Glen Burnie, Maryland, which has been in existence since 2023, moved from Glen Burnie, Maryland to Seaford, Delaware. And we actually I live in Seaford, Delaware. We're actually opening our new location, which if anybody's friends with me on Facebook, they've seen we've been painting all week and doing a whole bunch of different stuff to our brand new school. It's going to be in Laurel, Delaware. So the first class starts on September the 5th. So we've had a few students sign up already. We are taking 10 applicants right now. It's 10 students for the next class that we run. And basically those classes will last 6 months to a year. Everybody's at a different learning level and stuff like that. But then on top of that, we have some very, 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 very exciting news. I can't give you too much on that right now, but there's another part of that whole situation that we're in right now that is going to be groundbreaking for us and huge and something that we've never done before. So with that being said, just keep an eye on the Facebook page, facebook.com/United States Wrestling. And if you want to sign up, become a professional wrestler, manager, or referee, you can always do that at the USW Academy. And our turnaround has become pretty great. So
awesome. I appreciate you, Brian, for stopping by. I think it's been great. It's been very informational, and you know where to check Brian out. You can reach him out on Instagram, or if you want to check out a show, USW will be in Delaware coming up soon. So you guys know what to do. Until next time, it's been your boy Younglurch and Brian Hardy. See ya.